Chapter 1863. After talking about this, little Hachi finally felt sleepy again. She waved her hand lazily. "Take care, big brother. I won't send you off. By the way, please close the door for me." As she said this, she closed her eyes and prepared to rest. Tani responded and walked out of the door. There was one good thing about little Hachi: she had a big heart. She seemed to never have anything on her mind, and she didn't know what worry was. Every time something happened, Wu Yao and the rest would inevitably feel anxious, but she didn't. After doing what she had to do, she would always fall asleep as quickly as possible. When she woke up again, she was full of energy. This was a rare, free and easy feeling. She was like a butterfly that never knew fatigue. She was always light, always free, and always fluttering. This was good too, Tani thought. He walked to the door and suddenly stopped. "Yan Qing." Little Hachi covered her ears in annoyance and turned around. She didn't want to listen. Tani smiled. Yan Qing didn't do it on purpose. Besides, he apologized sincerely. "You don't have to keep harping on it. After all, you've caused trouble for him many times before, but he didn't do anything to you. What can he do to me?" Hearing this, little Hachi was unhappy. She immediately sat up and glared at Tani angrily. Because of her anger, her beautiful eyes shone even more brightly. Tani reminded her. "His strength is above yours. Even compared to me, I'm afraid he's not inferior." Little Hachi was stunned. She actually didn't know how strong Big Brother was. But she knew that if Big Brother made a move, he would definitely be able to finish her in 3 moves. Now, Big Brother actually said that Yan Qing's strength was not much weaker than his. How is that possible? Little Hachi frowned, feeling very doubtful. It wasn't that she hadn't interacted with Yan Qing before. His realm and strength didn't seem to be as powerful as Big Brother said. How can someone who can follow Rongxiu be a simple person? Tani raised his brows slightly. Little Hachi's mind was racing. There was no need for Big Brother to lie to her about this. Could it be, was that Yan Qing really that powerful? If he doesn't want to argue with you, just let him go. Little Hachi gritted her teeth and didn't say anything. Are we really going to let this matter go? She could not do it. He owes me in the first place. Tani didn't seem to be surprised by her answer. The corners of his lips lifted slightly, but he didn't say anything and walked out. He even closed the door behind him. Little Hachi glared at the door angrily. After a while, she lifted the quilt and fell asleep. "When I have the chance, I'll definitely get my revenge." Tani left little Hachi's room and walked forward. After walking out of the courtyard, he walked around the porch and saw a person waiting for him. It was Yan Qing. "Brother Xin," he bowed politely. Tani shook her head. "I've already said what I need to say, but..." Little Hachi has always been willful. Yan Qing's heart tightened. He originally thought that if Tani interceded, the situation would be better. But from the looks of it now, it was still a little difficult. It's all Yan Qing's fault. It's normal for little Hachi to be angry. "Thank you, Brother Xian. I'll personally apologize to little Hachi in the future." Tani nodded. "I still have something to do, so I'll take my leave first." Yan Qing didn't stay for long. Since His Highness was trapped in Black Sword Sect, he indeed had other matters to attend to. Tani smiled. "Please?" Yan Qing turned and left. His figure quickly disappeared. Tani looked in the direction he left in and turned around. With that person around, he indeed didn't have to worry too much about his master's safety. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu, who were trapped in Black Sword Sect, spent these 3 days peacefully. Under her watch, Sansan spent most of her time and energy on cultivation. It was much quieter. On the evening of the 4th day, a series of hurried footsteps finally sounded outside. Chu Luiyue was playing chess with Rongxiu. When they heard the commotion, they both looked up and exchanged glances. Rongxiu waved his sleeves. The chessboard and chess pieces instantly disappeared. Sansan was also abruptly awakened. She opened her eyes with a dazed expression. What's going on? Chu Luiyue had already stood up. Just in case, she and Rongxiu were still disguised as followers for the past few days. It's probably trouble? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes slightly, the corners of her lips curling up. Sansan's heart sank. The flesh on her cheeks trembled violently. "Master, is this a good thing? How can you still smile?" But Sansan did not have time to say this, because he could also hear that there were people quickly approaching from outside. He immediately stood up, tidied up his appearance, and pinched his waist with heartache. These 3 days he could not eat or sleep well and had to cultivate hard. He had lost a lot of weight. "Where are they?" Mo Yun's cold voice came from outside. The guard in charge of guarding hurriedly said, Reporting to Deputy Sect Leader. They're all inside. Open the door. Mo Yun ordered. Yes. The few guards saw that the situation was not right. They did not have time to ask more. Hearing this, they hurriedly went forward to open the door. But before they could rush over, the door was already opened from the inside. Sanson's round face appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Deputy Sect Leader? You're finally here. Sanson's face was filled with joy, as if he had seen his family. But soon after, his expression abruptly changed. Are you injured? Mo Yun's eyes were fixed on him, ignoring his words. The atmosphere was cold. The uneasy feeling in Sanson's heart grew stronger. Mo Yun slightly raised his chin. Boss Sanson, I can't let you go this time. Digression. Tomorrow at noon, mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1864. In fact, when Sanson saw Mo Yun coming over, he knew that he would not be able to leave this time. But when he heard this, he still pretended to be surprised. Why is that? Deputy Sect Leader, didn't we agree that you would let us go after you solved the problem at Lan Qingfeng? Mo Yun's expression was cold. It was up to him to decide whether he would let them go or not. Originally, he left these people here because he was worried that they would spread the news about what happened at Lan Qingfeng. In the end, when he arrived, he realized that his worries were unnecessary. Because the development of the situation had exceeded their expectations. Now, a few days had passed and the entire Peach Blossom Dock already knew about the fire at Lan Qingfeng. There was no point in covering it up anymore. When he realized this, he did think of ordering them to go back. But before he could do so, another incident happened. It was also that incident that made him return here to look for them personally. Boss Sanson, just follow me first. When we reach Lan Qingfeng you will understand. Sanson was shocked. Go to Lan Qingfeng? Weren't Mo Yun and the rest very afraid of this before? How come now? Seeing that Mo Yun had turned around and left, Sanson did not dare to delay. He glanced at Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu behind him and quickly followed. At this time, Mo Yun did not seem to care about Sanson bringing along these two followers. His face was solemn and his aura was cold. A strong smell of blood spread out from his body, which was even more chilling. Sanson knew that the situation was not good, so he did not dare to ask more. He just followed obediently and did not say a word, for fear that he would say something that would anger this person. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu were at the back and had minimized their presence. As he walked, Chu Luiyue secretly thought to himself. So, it seemed that Mo Yun had come back specifically to look for Sanson? What exactly had happened that made him make a trip here personally? The entire journey was silent and the atmosphere was stifling. When they were still some distance away from Lan Qingfeng, Chu Luiyue saw the flames from afar. It was the blue flame burning on Lanqing Peak. She frowned slightly. Only a few days had passed, but the fire on the Azure Peak was not under control at all. Instead, it was getting worse. It was already burning to such a terrifying degree. It was evening and the sky was turning dark. The light of the fire shone on the accumulated clouds, giving off a strange light. He could vaguely see that there were many people around Lan Qingfeng. Some of them were from the Black Sword sect, but most of them had come from all over the Peach Blossom Cove. Since such a big thing had happened, everyone who could come would naturally come. The group moved forward. When they finally arrived in front of Lan Qingfeng and saw everything clearly, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood why Mo Yun specially invited Sanson over. At this moment, the trees and rocks on Lanqing Peak had collapsed. It was a complete mess. More importantly, the blue flame had formed a circle halfway up the mountain, completely surrounding Lan Qingfeng. Standing there and looking over, everyone was able to clearly see that there was a crack in the mountain that was extending all the way to the mountain. The flame was gushing out from it. At first glance, it looked like a blue river that flowed from the middle of the mountain. But that was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that when the flame was burning, a translucent barrier was gradually forming above it, covering the huge Lan Qingfeng. It was almost exactly the same as Sanson's small space. However, judging from the current situation, half of the mountain was within the barrier. Moreover, it was a hemispherical flame that was burning on the mountain. From the outside it looked strange and dazzling. Sanson was stunned when she saw this. How did this happen? When they were here, wasn't it just a burning line of fire? It had only been a few days and it had become like this? Mo Yun raised his finger and pointed forward. Boss Sanson, I'll have to trouble you to go again and find out what happened. It was not a discussion, nor was it an inquiry. This was an order that could not be disobeyed. Sanson's mouth twitched. He knew that nothing good would come out of calling him over. He knew very well why Mo Yun called him over. Wasn't it because he was the owner of that small space? Seeing that the flame above Lan Qingfeng was gradually burning to the size of that small space, who else had the most confidence to go over and find out what was going on besides him? Many people in the surroundings looked over. Surprise, suspicion, excitement. Obviously they also wanted to see if the famous boss Sanson could handle the situation in front of them. Sanson wanted to cry but had no tears. He knew that he had no choice and no reason to refuse. He could only accept it. Then, since you said so, I'll go and take a look. Sanson took a deep breath and clasped his hands together nervously. Mo Yun was very satisfied with his tactfulness. Boss Sanson, you don't have to be troubled. Once you sense danger, retreat immediately. Sanson could not die yet. Majin sect still needed him to provide those herbs and pills. Sanson nodded. Of course he knew this. He was the master's little treasury now. No matter what, he could not lose it in this place. After mentally preparing himself, he finally lifted his foot. Boss, we'll go with you. Chu Luiyue suddenly spoke. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1865. Sanson turned around in surprise. Just as he was about to refuse, he suddenly recalled the scene in the small space. With just a thought, Master triggered a huge energy whirlpool and even set the boundary ablaze. Perhaps Master had an even more powerful trump card? In addition, it was said that the Holy Sun was also extremely powerful. If the two of them could be together, it would indeed be much safer. Perhaps they could find out more. Sanson looked at Mo Yun inquiringly. Vice sect leader, what do you think? Mo Yun said casually. Up to you. They were just two followers. It did not matter if they followed him or not. If Boss Sanson felt that this would give him a sense of security, he did not mind letting him bring them along. After all, the key lay with him. After a few days of torture, Mo Yun's mentality had undergone a huge change. He just wanted to figure out what was going on as soon as possible. What method did he use to completely solve this problem? As for the rest, he did not care. Sanson was instantly overjoyed. However, he did not show it on his face. He only coughed and said to Chu Luiyue and Mo Yun, "Then let's go. You must follow me closely later. If there's anything wrong, retreat immediately." After saying that, he moved and took the lead to fly forward. Chu Luiyue and Mo Yun followed closely behind. Countless gazes fell on them. There was no doubt that they were the focus of everyone's attention. It seems that there are many people who are curious about Lan Qingfeng. Chu Luiyue said softly. Rong Xiu chuckled. It's a natural phenomenon. It's very likely that it's the arrival of a treasure. Naturally, they are very interested. In this world, who did not want to become stronger? Who did not want to obtain a huge opportunity? Who did not want to soar to the sky? Smelling the thick smell of blood in the air, Chu Luiyue raised the corner of his lips slightly. However, there was no smile in his eyes. It seems that too many people have died before. That's why they are so restrained. If they did not know how dangerous Lan Qingfeng was, they would have rushed up like a swarm of bees. Why would they call Sanson over? It was only when there was a need for someone to risk their life, and this person could only be Sanson, that Mo Yun thought of Sanson and brought him over. Thinking about it this way, Sanson's days here were indeed tough. The people of the Black Sword sect had only used him from the beginning to the end. When did they ever really put Sanson in their eyes? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue's eyes turned cold. Soon, the three of them arrived at the halfway point of the mountain and stood less than 10 steps away from the burning flames. Sanson was the first to stop. Standing there, he could already feel the blazing temperature, as well as the astonishing power and pressure contained within the flames. Sanson turned around to look at the two of them with shock in his eyes. Why do I feel that the might of this flame seems to be much stronger than a few days ago? Chu Luiyue gently nodded. It's not an illusion. That's the truth. She noticed it too. Furthermore, this increase in power did not seem to be purely due to the spread of the fire. Sanson swallowed hard and looked at the flames in front of her again, as well as the translucent barrier that had formed at some point in time. Actually, he was very familiar with the aura on it, because it was almost exactly the same as the one on his small space. Thinking about it, it made sense. It was the same flame to begin with, so the barrier formed by its power should naturally be the same as well. Sanson was extremely nervous at this moment. He took a few more steps forward. The closer he got, the more he felt that his entire body was about to burn up. He stretched out his hand and a cluster of flames surged out from his palm. The appearance of this flame slightly reduced the burning sensation of the flames in front of him. Sanson gritted his teeth and slowly stretched his hand forward. At this moment he was worried that he could not enter, but he was also worried that he could enter. If he could not enter, what if he was injured by the flames again? If he could enter, then it would be even more troublesome. In front of so many people, under the gaze of so many pairs of eyes, if he successfully entered this barrier, what would these people think? His heart was filled with apprehension as the flame in his palm finally made contact with the translucent barrier. Whoosh! Sparks flew everywhere. The power of both sides collided fiercely. A powerful force swept over, and Sanson bore the brunt of it. His body instantly flew out uncontrollably. A few low exclamations came from the crowd. Looks like Boss Sanson can't do it either. It can't be, right? That flame is clearly the same. How can Boss Sanson not be able to handle it? The flames look the same, but who knows what's going on inside. I heard that Boss Sanson came here with Mo Lin and the others a few days ago, but they could not solve the problem of the flame at that time. After that, he was brought to Black Sword Sect. If this barrier did not appear out of nowhere today, I'm afraid the people of Black Sword Sect would not have let him come here again. I was wondering why I haven't seen him for the past few days. So this is what happened. If even he can't do it, then the rest of us will have no chance at all, right? That might not be the case. Looking at Lan Qingfeng's current situation, there's an 80% chance that some treasure is about to appear. Otherwise, why would the people of Black Sword Sect waste so much time and energy on this? Things like fortuitous encounters were hard to predict. Maybe. Between you and me, one of us will get lucky. This opportunity is given to you. Do you really dare to take it? It's been so long. Can't you see that the people of Black Sword Sect are determined to get the treasure under Lan Qingfeng? If you want it, you need to be alive. His words caused many people's expressions to change slightly, and they all fell silent. How could they not understand this logic? Black Sword Sect was almost omnipotent in Peach Blossom Cove. Wanting to snatch something from them would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Sanson barely managed to stabilize his body, and his face paled a little. However, he felt much more relaxed in his heart. This is good. After being rejected in front of everyone, even Mo Yun would not be able to force him to try to enter the barrier. Wouldn't this matter end just like that? He rolled his eyes and an idea came to his mind. I still have to try. I have to put on a show to the end. As long as I can make those people believe that I've tried my best and still can't enter, I can successfully escape. When he thought of this, Sanson held his breath and concentrated again. He mobilized all the energy in his body, and with an even stronger force, he stretched his hand forward. This time, the flame in his palm burned even more fiercely. Boom. The two flames collided. Sanson was overjoyed. It worked. However, just as he turned his toes and was about to take advantage of the situation to retreat, he was shocked to see that the flame that gushed out from the mountain rock suddenly spread toward him, and tightly bound his wrist. Then it pulled hard. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1866. A sudden change occurred. All of this happened too suddenly, and Sanson was not prepared. By the time he reacted, the flame had already turned into a long whip, tightly wrapping around his wrist. Immediately after, a strong force pulled him towards the barrier. He didn't even have time to exclaim before his entire body was quickly dragged into the translucent barrier. Chu Liuyu's pupils constricted, and without thinking, he immediately stepped forward. Almost at the same time, Rong Xiu also followed. Just at this moment, two more flames swept over. The flames wrapped around the two's bodies tightly, and then dragged them into it. The two's figures quickly disappeared. A few ripples appeared on the barrier, and then it quickly returned to calmness. As if nothing had happened. All of the onlookers were stunned on the spot. Just now. What happened? Those three people were actually all forcibly dragged into the boundary by that strange flame? Mo Yun's brows immediately furrowed. He moved his feet and was about to step forward. The people next to him hurriedly dissuaded him. Deputy Sect Leader, please reconsider. That flame and the barrier are both extremely dangerous. You must not rashly go forward. It wasn't that similar things hadn't happened before. Some people tried to enter the barrier, but they were wrapped in the flame and burned to death on the spot. This was also why there were so many people watching here, but no one casually stepped forward. The bloody lesson in front was right in front of everyone's eyes. The only difference was that those people were burned to death by the flame outside the barrier, while Sanson and the others were drawn into the barrier and disappeared. Mo Yun's footsteps paused, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. He intuitively felt that something was wrong, but he wasn't 100% sure in his heart, so he was a little hesitant. Deputy Sect Leader, Boss Sanson is the owner of that small space no matter what. Since these flames are of the same origin, maybe he has another way to save his life inside. The people below saw that he seemed to be a little shaken, and hurriedly persuaded him again. Mo Yun thought for a moment, then raised his eyes and looked forward again. This time he realized that something was wrong. The barrier was clearly translucent before, but after Sanson and the others were dragged in, they couldn't see their figures at all. Even the scenery inside had completely disappeared. One had to know that they could see Lan Qingfeng's mountain peak that was trapped inside earlier. At this moment, the translucent barrier seemed to be shrouded in a thin layer of smoke, concealing everything inside. Mo Yun's face turned completely cold. Continue to wait. The Black Sword sect was not the only one waiting. The onlookers also began a long and torturous wait. Invisible air currents seemed to be surging towards the burning flame. Then, the aura of the flame increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chu Liyue's pupils suddenly shrank. This flame was indeed absorbing the energy of heaven and earth and transforming it into its own pressure. How could this be? Chu Liyue was very shocked. She could understand that cultivators or magical beasts would devour the energy of heaven and earth. In addition, some precious treasures of heaven and earth also needed the nourishment of this energy to grow. This was also normal. But she had never heard of a flame in the world that could devour the energy of heaven and earth and transform it into its own use. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1867. No wonder the fire could spread to such an extent in just a few days. Chu Liyue looked at Sanson. Sanson, that small space of yours? Sanson knew what she was going to ask and shook his head. My small space shouldn't be like this. This place is indeed different. Chu Liyue nodded, but the doubts in her heart deepened. The fire on Lanqing Peak was indeed emitting an unusual aura. At this moment, a familiar wave came from her body. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. It was the black shield again. She didn't move immediately but looked around first. This barrier has been covered. We can't see outside and the people outside can't see us either. Rong Xiu seemed to have guessed her thoughts and said calmly and affirmatively. Chu Liyue then felt more at ease. After hesitating for a moment, she summoned the black shield again. Sanson took a step back subconsciously. His small eyes were still full of nervousness. He was still traumatized by what happened last time. So much so that when he saw the black shield again he would instinctively avoid it. His throat was dry and his heart was beating wildly. He pointed at the black shield and asked in a trembling voice. Master, don't tell me you're going to repeat what happened that day? As he spoke, he looked up with lingering fear. He was afraid that the barrier would suddenly open and a ball of fire would burn upside down. Chu Liyue didn't say anything, because she was also very uncertain about this now. The ripples on the black shield were still spreading out. Bus, bus, bus. The wave was getting stronger and stronger, and the power contained in it was getting more and more shocking. Finally, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth gathered again and surged toward the black shield. A ray of light appeared on the shield. Although it was very weak, it couldn't be ignored. The three people present knew clearly how terrifying the light was. Sanson pointed at the black shield, his small hands trembling. He was in a bad mood. Master. It's really starting again. Chu Liyue stared at it. In fact, she also wanted to see what the black shield was up to. The wind whistled. The surrounding energy began to surge toward them like a tide. And all the energy was continuously poured into the black shield. The vast energy seemed to have poured into a bottomless pit, and it didn't cause any waves. The only change Chu Liyue could see was that the more energy poured in, the brighter the light on the black shield. Finally, at a certain moment, a faint cracking sound could be heard. Crack. At the edge of the shield there was a small corner of rust that was curled up. It looked like it was about to peel off. This seems to be a little slower than that day in the small space. Chu Liyue analyzed. Rong Xiu looked around. It's probably because the energy of heaven and earth here isn't as to be there. Chu Liyue nodded in understanding. Indeed, in comparison this place could not be compared to that small space. These flames came out from under the rocks of Lan Qingfeng and formed this huge barrier. Was she the real target of these flames? Or rather, the black shield? Chu Liyue wasn't sure. Sanson looked at Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu. He let out a long sigh and didn't want to say anything. He could see that no matter what the situation was, the two of them would always be so calm and composed. Even if the fire was on their eyebrows they wouldn't panic. He was left alone, nervous and uneasy. Looking at her master's calm appearance, Sanson suddenly felt a lot more at ease. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists. What was there to worry about? Since it had already happened, the best choice was to accept it. Besides, if there were any treasures hidden under Lanqing Peak, it would most likely belong to his master. Of course, this was a good thing. As for the Ink Sword sect outside, when the time came he could go out and trick them. With this thought, Sanson felt more at ease. Anyway, Big Brother and the others were here. Would they really be bullied by the Ink Sword sect? Master, this shield of yours seems to be able to control the flames? Sanson quickly found the crux of the matter after putting aside those messy thoughts. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up as she pondered. It seems to be true, she didn't think about it before. Now that Sanson reminded her, she realized that it was true. She looked behind her. On the ground there was a crevice that spread out. The blue flames were surging out from it. The night was dark, but the main hall of the Yu residence was brightly lit. Sun Yi and the others were gathered here. The atmosphere was a little tense. Big Brother, the Ink Sword sect brought Master and the others to Lanqing Peak. I'm afraid they don't have good intentions. Should we go over? Wu Yao was the first to speak, breaking the silence. Other than Sun Yi, he was the one with the highest ranking here. They had received the news the moment something happened to the Ink Sword sect. But for some reason Big Brother didn't do anything. They couldn't help but come over. Yes, Big Brother, many people in the entire Peach Blossom Cove have gone to Lanqing Peak. Even if we go over now, we shouldn't attract any attention. Yu Jio quickly added. Also, if we don't go, the Ink Sword sect will suspect us even more. They didn't act rashly because the news of Sanson and the others being locked up in the Ink Sword sect was sealed. But now, almost everyone knew about it. They shouldn't have anything to worry about. Sun Yi pondered for a moment and didn't answer immediately. Instead he looked at Yen Qing. Brother Yen, what do you think? The remaining pairs of eyes in the main hall all looked over. Yen Qing was called over by Sun Yi. Wu Yao and the others were a little confused when they saw him, but they didn't ask. Now that Sun Yi even took the initiative to ask for his opinion, they were even more nervous. What was Big Brother doing? Was he planning to join forces with Yen Qing? Yen Qing nodded. His Highness and the others should be fine for now. There's no need for us to do anything. But, if you're really worried, there's no harm in going. Yu Jio's words make sense. Lanqing Peak's matter has already blown up. If we still don't do anything, it seems even more inappropriate. They looked at each other. Yen Qing didn't seem to be worried at all. Could it be that he really had some kind of confidence? Sun Yi nodded when he heard this. In that case then, I'll go personally. As he spoke, he stood up. Big Brother, the remaining people spoke in unison, clearly wanting to follow him. You guys stay here. Sun Yi didn't give them a chance to speak at all. Then he looked at Yen Qing. I'll leave the Yu residence to Brother Yen for now. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1868. As soon as he finished speaking, a trace of astonishment flashed across the faces of everyone present. What did Big Brother mean? Leaving the safety of the entire Yu residence in Yen Qing's hands? Wasn't he trusting Yen Qing too much? Hearing this, Yen Qing's eyes were filled with shock for a moment. He was also shocked by Sun Yi's decision. However, he quickly suppressed his emotions and nodded lightly. Sun Yi exhorted a few more words before lifting his feet to leave. His slender green figure swiftly disappeared from everyone's sight. Yen Qing narrowed his eyes. This Sun Yi, he seemed to know a lot. The room fell silent. Fortunately, they had been together for a period of time and were familiar with each other. So Wu Yao and the others quickly accepted their big brother's arrangement and left after greeting Yen Qing. But little Hachi didn't appear from the beginning to the end. Maybe she was too tired from gathering information, or maybe she knew that Yen Qing was here and didn't come on purpose. Yen Qing originally wanted to ask a few people, but then he remembered that this was their personal grudge after all. It was already very troublesome to let Sun Yi get involved. There was no need to involve others. He thought about it but didn't say anything. As for Black Sword sect, he pondered for a while and left quickly. It was already late at night when Sun Yi arrived at Lanqing Peak. Under the dark night sky, only Lanqing Peak was shining brightly. Many people had already gathered here. Sun Yi's arrival didn't attract anyone's attention. He chose an inconspicuous spot and stood with his hands behind his back as he looked at Lanqing Peak. People around looked over but didn't pay much attention. After such a big commotion, people kept coming over. They were already used to it. It's been 2 hours, but Third Boss and the others haven't come out. Could they have? I don't think so. Qingshui Cliff has been quiet. If something happened to him, it's impossible for there to be no movement at all. That's true. But they haven't come out. No one knows what's going on inside. Waiting like this is really torturous. Hey, if you're tired of waiting, why don't you just leave? I'm still here to see what Lan Qingfeng is hiding and whether the third boss will snatch it away. You? I'm just here to join in the fun. I'm not like some people who are delusional and trying to snatch something from the Ink Sword sect. What nonsense are you talking about? All sorts of discussions could be heard from the surroundings. Sun Yi listened quietly with a calm expression. His eyes turned slightly as he glanced at Mo Yun and the others in the distance. The people of the Black Sword sect were indeed eyeing them covetously. Even if Master and the others made it out safely, presumably he still had to deal with this hurdle. Sun Yi slowly tightened his grip. The people outside were waiting anxiously. The people inside had almost forgotten the passage of time. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged with her black shield placed in front of her. There was an energy vortex above the shield. At this moment, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth was still pouring into it continuously. Chu Luiyue had calmed down from her initial surprise, suspicion, and speculation. She was just waiting. They were waiting to see when this anomaly would end. The surrounding flames were still burning. It wasn't that Chu Luiyue wasn't curious about where the fire came from and what was hidden under Lanqing Peak. But the current situation did not allow her to split the mountain and find out. Therefore, she decided to focus all her attention on her black shield. Crack. Another sound was heard. Chu Luiyue perked up. The cracked rust had finally completely peeled off from the shield. Chu Luiyue heaved a long sigh of relief. Back then, in the small space, the 2 pieces of rust had peeled off in the blink of an eye. But to reach this place it took several times longer than the time. But fortunately, finally, buzz. Another buzzing sound was heard, but it did not come from the shield. Chu Luiyue was stunned and looked up at the two. Yo, did you hear something? Sanson quickly nodded. Yes, it seems to be. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed. It's coming from below. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Luiyue felt the ground beneath her tremble violently. Master. Sanson seemed to have seen something shocking and quickly pointed behind Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue looked back. She saw something flying out from the burning blue flames. It turned into a dazzling light and flew towards them at high speed. Chu Luiyue remembered clearly. That was the place where the flames on Lan Qingfeng first erupted. What flew out from that place was... Before Chu Luiyue could see it clearly, that thing had flown in front of her and landed on the black shield. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and focused on it. She saw that the place where the rust had peeled off was now covered by a piece of blue crystal. That piece of crystal was extremely thin, like blue ice. When it touched the black shield, it quickly melted and disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, the position of the shallow depression suddenly changed. Chu Luiyue inched closer and took a closer look. The complicated lines were faintly discernible. Chu Luiyue was stunned. There was a secret text engraved on the black armor? The place where the rust had peeled off faintly revealed the tip of the iceberg. It was as if the secret that had been covered in dust for a long time was finally revealed. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1869. Chu Luiyue was slightly stunned. The secret text seemed to contain some kind of indescribable pressure and aura, which made people unconsciously revere it. Desolate, solemn, vague, and sacred. At this moment, she seemed to see the stars change and the sun and moon reincarnate from that small piece of complicated secret text. You are? Rong Xiu's low and cold voice came. Chu Luiyue suddenly came back to her senses and looked up at him. What's wrong? Rong Xiu looked at her, his eyes slightly deep. You were entranced just now. Entranced? Chu Luiyue's face flashed with a trace of confusion. Sanson, who was next to her, explained. Yes. Master, you stared at that shield for a full quarter of an hour just now. We called you for a while. That scene, it was as if her soul had left her body, which really frightened her. Fortunately, Rong Xiu was there and finally woke her master up. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth. A quarter of an hour? It was actually that long? She thought she just took a look. What did you see just now? Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly and asked softly. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. She seemed to have seen a lot of things, but at this moment she seemed to have seen nothing. She slightly lowered her eyes. That piece of secret text seemed to have been hidden. At a rough glance, it looked like a few traces left on the surface. If one didn't look carefully, no one would know what it was. But she was very clear in her heart that there was definitely a huge secret hidden in this black shield. Nothing, I just found that this thing seems to have more background than I expected. Chu Liwei slightly raised the corner of her mouth. She had known before that this black shield was not an ordinary item. Now it seemed that it was obviously beyond her expectations. Recalling the moment when she saw that corner of secret text, the solemn and vast majesty that almost suffocated her, her heart still couldn't help but beat faster. It was as if the blood in his body was about to boil. A dark light flashed through Rongshio's eyes. Sanson asked curiously, "Master, just now, what exactly was it that flew over? They are really coming for you, aren't they?" Chu Liwei was a little surprised. "Didn't you see it?" Although the thin blue crystal was flying very quickly, it stopped for a moment on the black shield after it landed. Logically speaking, he should be able to see it clearly. Sanson looked aggrieved. No, was Master despising him for being too weak and having poor eyesight? Seeing his expression, how could Chu Liwei not know what he was thinking? He shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "All right, I was just asking casually. That thing came and went quickly. It's normal that you didn't see it?" As she spoke, she turned to look at Rongshio. As if sensing her gaze, Rongshio raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his scarlet thin lips. "It's not too late to talk about this later. We may be able to get out now." Chu Liwei calmed down. Rongshio did see it. And it seemed that he had guessed something. Sure enough, nothing could be hidden from this man, she thought. Looking at Rongshio's reaction, could it be that he knew something about this thing? Maybe after getting out she could find a time to ask him, "We can get out?" Really? Sanson was at a loss when he heard Rongshio's words. He was so nervous just now. Why did he say that they could get out in the blink of an eye? The surrounding flames were still burning, and the enchantment hadn't changed. Chu Liwei raised his chin. "Sanson, go and try." There was no reason not to listen to his master. Sanson obediently walked to the edge of the enchantment. Originally, he was very nervous, but after walking here, he realized that the aura of the enchantment seemed to have undergone a subtle change. The dangerous feeling from before seemed to have dissipated a lot. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind and he exclaimed, "Master!" The flames stopped devouring the energy of heaven and earth. Chu Liwei nodded. Previously, when Rongshio said that they could go out, she had already noticed this. It seemed that the thin crystal was really the secret buried in Lanqing Peak. After realizing that the flames were not as dangerous as before, Sanson was much more confident. He held his breath and raised his hand again. Boom! A cluster of blue flames suddenly gushed out from his palm. Then his hand slowly reached forward. Buzz! The enchantment seemed to have sensed something, and suddenly ripples appeared. Then the enchantment opened. Chu Liwei had already put away the black shield. Seeing the enchantment suddenly open, her slender white fingers moved gently. A flame suddenly swept over and tightly wrapped around Sanson's waist, and then threw him out with force. "Damn!" Sanson screamed. This thing came too suddenly, didn't it? There was no sign at all. Even if it was a little earlier, he could have made some preparations. With this wail, his figure was thrown out in the blink of an eye. Chu Liwei looked at Rongshio. "Shall we go too?" Rongshio's eyes flashed with a faint smile and he whispered, You have to be merciful to your husband." Chu Liu's face was slightly hot. "This man?" She looked away for a moment and then said, "I know." Her voice was so soft that it seemed to dissipate in the wind at any time, but there was a trace of undetectable firmness and gentleness. If she didn't feel sorry for her own man, would she expect others to feel sorry for him? Even if he didn't ask, she wouldn't do anything to him. Chu Liwei was a little helpless, but also a little amused. Sometimes this man was just too smart. While they were talking, two flames were already heading straight for them. The two figures were instantly wrapped up. The next moment they were also thrown out by the flames. It was early in the morning and the sky was bright. A faint light shone from behind the clouds, and half the sky was dyed with a faint layer of gold. The people who had been waiting around Lan Qingfeng for a few days and nights had already exhausted most of their energy. Suddenly, a cry of surprise spread through the silent crowd, breaking the cold atmosphere. "Look!" The enchantment opened. Like a bucket of cold water being poured into a pot of oil, it instantly boiled. Everyone was energized and they all looked at the enchantment outside Lan Qingfeng. Sure enough, the enchantment that had been sealed for a whole night suddenly opened. Almost at the same time, a flame was thrown out. Dark blue flames wrapped around a round figure, and it quickly rushed out from within. It was Boss Sanson. A sharp-eyed person recognized Sanson and immediately exclaimed, "He's not dead?" This voice was filled with doubt and shock. Although the figure's clothes were torn, his face was covered in dust and he looked very miserable, but he was indeed alive and well. Everyone was stunned for a moment. They all thought that after a night of suffering, Sanson would not be able to survive. In the end, he actually came out alive. At this moment, another two figures rushed out of the enchantment. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1870. Those are third boss's two followers? They actually came out? Someone muttered in shock. They couldn't be blamed for being shocked. This matter was too strange. If Sanson didn't die, they could still understand. After all, he was the owner of the small space in Qingshui Cliff. The flames he possessed were almost the same as the flames on Lanqing Peak. Everyone might be a little surprised that he could keep his life, but after thinking about it carefully, they felt that it was normal. But what's going on with those two followers? They actually followed closely and came out unscathed? Of course, the two of them didn't seem to be in good condition either. They seemed to be injured. However, compared to the number of people who had died under the blue flames, this was simply too strange. Mo Yun narrowed his eyes the moment he saw them come out. At this point, he was full of doubts about these people. He walked forward. After Sanson was thrown out, it took him a lot of effort to stabilize his body. The moment he stood still, he was acutely aware of the gazes around him. This made him tense up. He didn't need to look to know how those people were looking at him at this time. Sanson lowered his eyes, rolled his eyes, and immediately reacted. At this moment, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu rushed out of the enchantment almost at the same time. At first glance, the three of them were wrapped in the flames and thrown out fiercely. But Sanson knew in his heart that it wasn't that easy to make these people completely believe this. Third boss. A familiar and cold voice came from behind him. Sanson's heart trembled and he turned back to look. His face was a little panicked and confused, as if he hadn't realized what had happened. Vice sect leader? Mo Yun stared at him closely, and the corner of his mouth twitched. Third boss, it seems that you're really lucky. So many people tried to go in before, but they lost their lives before they even got close. Not only did you go in, but after a night you came out alive. Although he was smiling, there was no trace of a smile at the corner of his eyes. Especially those eyes. It was probably because he had been here for several days without sleep and rest. His eyes were bloodshot, which made him look even colder. Being stared at like this, Sanson only felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. His heart trembled. Thank you for your concern, Vice Sect Master. I was just lucky. Mo Yun looked behind him and said word by word. The fact that third boss came out alone is a fluke. The fact that the three of you managed to escape safely isn't something that can be explained by the word fluke. Looks like third boss's ability has far exceeded our expectations. Although he felt that the scene in front of him was very strange, he did not associate it with Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu. After all, from beginning to end, the two of them really looked no different from ordinary followers. Mo Yun subconsciously attributed all these reasons to Sanson. It was normal for him to think that way. After all, Sanson was the owner of the small space in Qingshui Cliff. With such a fortuitous encounter, it was normal for him to have more confidence than ordinary people. Sanson smiled awkwardly and bitterly. This Vice Sect Master, to tell you the truth, I also don't know what's going on. Fortunately, Mo Yun did not suspect Master and the others. But now Mo Yun's attention was obviously on him. Sanson was very clear that it would not be so easy to get away with it this time. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Mo Yun's face was expressionless. Obviously he did not believe it. Vice Sect Master, the fire seems to be smaller. A voice came from the side. Sanson took a look and saw that it was Mo Lin who spoke. Previously, he had been standing silently by the side, looking dispirited and dejected. He was completely different from his past glory. Sanson guessed that it should be because he did not handle Lan Qingfeng's matter well, so Mo Lin was punished by Mo Yun and became like this. It was just that Mo Lin was obviously unwilling, which was why he came forward immediately. Mo Yun looked in the direction of his voice and frowned slightly. The flames that were still burning before did not continue to spread at this time. Could it be? This was also because of Sanson? Countless guesses flashed through Mo Yun's mind. Go over and take a look. Mo Yun thought for a while and made a decision. Mo Lin was shocked at first, then he clenched his teeth tightly. Yes. He knew that it was very dangerous, but it was also his only chance to turn the tables. He had to seize it. Mo Lin turned around without hesitation and went straight to the barrier on Lan Qingfeng. When he reached the barrier, he quickly mobilized the force in his body and pulled out the sword at his waist. He held the sword hilt tightly with both hands and slashed down fiercely. This move condensed 100% of his strength. A greenish-black sword light tore through the void and headed straight for the barrier. Swoosh! That originally incomparably sturdy barrier was suddenly split open. In an instant, the crowd of onlookers exclaimed, "Wasn't that barrier incomparably sturdy before? Even if everyone joined forces, they still could not open it? Now, it was actually split open by Mo Lin so easily?" One had to know that although Mo Lin was strong, he was also injured previously. The strength that he could exert now was only 70% to 80% of his peak strength. It's not that Mo Lin has become stronger, but the power of the barrier has weakened. Someone realized something and exclaimed softly. The people present were not stupid. Seeing this situation, their brains spun and they could almost guess what had happened. But the key point was, how did the barrier suddenly weaken? It was hard not to link this to Sanson, who had just come out. Mo Yun glanced at Sanson and said meaningfully, "Don't worry. Boss Sanson, it seems that you are really our lucky star. So many people in the Black Sword sect were unable to solve this problem, but when it came to you, you only spent a single night to solve it. If I had known, I would have invited you over earlier. Then, so many people would not have died in vain." Mo Yun did not feel heartache or regret for the deaths of those people. He just felt that it was a disgrace. There were so many people in Ink Sword sect, but they could not even compare to Sanson. All the effort they had put in the past few days had been wasted. With so many people watching, they would only think that Ink Sword sect was incompetent. Hearing this, Sanson's back was drenched in cold sweat. He was not stupid enough to think that this was really a compliment to him. On the other side, after Mo Lin split open a hole in the barrier, the entire barrier quickly dissipated. In less than 15 minutes, only the blue flames were left on the azure peak. But the momentum of the flames was also gradually decreasing. Under everyone's gaze, the flames retreated into the cracks in the mountain rocks, leaving only a low line of fire burning quietly. Mo Yun's expression was cold. "Mo Lin, you and the others continue to guard here." Mo Lin knew that he had atoned for his sins and escaped a calamity. He heaved a sigh of relief. "Yes." Mo Yun turned to look at Sanson. "Boss Sanson, I have some things that I would like to ask you about in detail. I wonder if it is convenient?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1871. Sanson really wanted to say, "It's not convenient." However, he didn't want to die so quickly, so he nodded. "It's convenient? If Vice Sect Leader has any instructions, just say it. There's no need to be so polite." Mo Yun laughed. The laughter was very strange, with a sigh and a hint of sarcasm. What kind of person is Third Boss? How could we offend him? Who knows, we might have to rely on Third Boss in the future. It's only right for us to be polite. Sanson was speechless. Mo Yun had already determined that everything was related to him. How could he refute? With so many pairs of eyes watching, the power of the barrier was indeed reduced when he entered and exited. He could even break it with a single sword strike. He wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. However, compared to his master being discovered, it was better for Mo Yun and the others to place all their suspicions on him. Sanson's mood recovered a little when he thought of this. He lowered his eyes slightly, looking embarrassed and helpless. I'll just listen to Vice Sect Leader's arrangements." Mo Yun turned around and planned to return to Ink Sword Sect. Just as he took a step forward, he paused again and turned his head halfway. "The matter of Lan Qingfeng has been settled. Everyone please leave." This voice was low and cold, carrying with it a high and mighty arrogance. It was as if everyone should follow his orders and couldn't be disobeyed. The onlookers had different expressions. Previously, Ink Sword Sect had tried to cover it up. Now that the matter was out in the open, they didn't care anymore and directly ordered them to leave. This meant that they wanted to take over Lan Qingfeng. However, no matter how dissatisfied the onlookers were, no one dared to stand out and challenge Mo Yun. In the past few days, Ink Sword Sect had suffered heavy casualties, but Mo Yun didn't even blink. It was obvious that he was determined to get Lan Qingfeng. If anyone wanted to go against them, they would have to pay an extremely painful price. After Mo Yun finished speaking, he didn't care about the onlookers' reaction and turned to leave. He really didn't care about these people. At this moment, he only wanted to find Sanson and ask him what had happened inside the barrier. Sanson braced himself and followed him. "Vice Sect Leader, I'll go back with you. However, my 2 followers have been tormented during this period. I wonder if you can let them go back first. Mo Yun did not turn his head and just waved his hand. They were just 2 insignificant servants. There was nothing to worry about. As long as he brought Sanson back, everything would come to light. Sanson heaved a sigh of relief and turned to Chu Luiyue. Alright, you guys can go back first. While you're at it, report to the people in the mansion that you're safe. After some time I will naturally return. Chu Luiyue's lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but when she saw the look in Sanson's eyes, she finally nodded. Yes. The matter of Lan Qingfeng had finally come to an end. Other than the people from the Black Sword sect who continued to stand guard in the vicinity, the others all left one after another. However, in the eyes of the people of Peach Blossom Dock, this matter was not truly over. After all, the fire on Lankingfeng Peak was still burning, and the secrets hidden within had yet to be revealed. Everyone began to observe, waiting for the Black Sword sect's next move. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu were silent the entire way back to the Yu estate. Yan Qing was already waiting at the main gate. Seeing the 2 of them return, Yan Qing's tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Your Highness, Princess. Rong Xiu nodded. Close the door. Yan Qing responded and went to close the door. Chu Luiyue turned around. Cin. The void trembled and a figure walked out. It was Cin Yi who had gone to Lan Qingfeng Peak to check on the situation. When he saw Chu Luiyue and the others come out of the barrier, he wanted to go forward. However, Mo Yun was staring at him covetously. After careful consideration, he decided to wait and see. Also, because Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu pretended to be ordinary servants, it was inconvenient for him to welcome them. So, he decided to hide and secretly returned with the 2 of them. Master, Your Highness. Cin Yi bowed. Chu Luiyue glanced at the closed door. His eyes darkened. It seems that the people from Ink Sword sect won't leave so easily for a while. Besides Cin Yi, there were a few people from Ink Sword sect who had been secretly following them. Along the way, she and Rong Xiu pretended not to notice. But even when the 2 of them returned, those people still hadn't left. Instead, they were hiding around the Yu mansion. Obviously, Mo Yun was still very vigilant against them. 3 high gods are nothing to worry about. Cin Yi said indifferently. I've already left a mark on them. Once they make a move, I'll know immediately. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. She had always trusted Cin Yi. Hearing this, Yan Qing glanced at Cin Yi again. 3 high gods were nothing to worry about. To be able to say such words, Cin Yi's strength was probably even more shocking than he had expected, Rong Xiu said. Let's go in first and discuss. Wu Yao and the others knew that the 2 of them had returned and hurried over. The hall was soon bustling with noise and excitement. Master, were you injured in Ink Sword sect these few days? Did those people do anything to you? Master and His Highness are both back. Is there a conclusion to the matter at Lan Qingfeng? Ink Sword sect seems to have suffered heavy casualties this time. Why did they let them go so easily? Wu Yao and the others hurriedly asked as soon as they saw Chu Luiyue and Cin Yi. 13 was the first to realize that something was wrong. Where's third brother? Master, he didn't come back with you? When he said this, Wu Yao and the others realized that Sanson was really not around. Chu Luiyue looked at 13 with relief. 13 was probably the only one who could still remember Sanson at this time. He was brought back to Ink Sword sect by Mo Yun. The others were stunned. Then, Chu Luiyue briefly told them everything that had happened in the past few days, including the last night when the 3 of them were sucked into the boundary of Lan Qingfeng and came out in the end. Of course, she didn't mention that the black shield had been peeled off in the boundary. After hearing this, the few of them were all stunned. Then isn't third brother in danger this time? 13 opened his mouth and asked helplessly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1872. Although they did not see what happened to Lan Qingfeng with their own eyes, based on what their master had said, the people from Majin sect would definitely place all their suspicions on Sanson. Sanson has a small space, and Majin sect still needs him to provide them with heavenly treasures. They won't kill him for the time being. Chu Luiyue said calmly. Moreover, after this incident, they will only be more curious about Sanson. Before they get a satisfactory answer from Sanson, they won't do anything to him. However, she was referring to the assassins. As for whether they would use some methods to deal with Sanson, no one could be sure. After all, Mo Yun, Chu Luiyue frowned slightly as she recalled that pair of cold and murderous eyes. She was not worried about Sanson's safety, but she was worried that he would be tortured. Majin sect was very evil. Who knew how they would treat him? Then are we just going to wait like this? 13 was slightly relieved after hearing Chu Liyue's words. However, when he thought about how Sansan was taken away by the people from Ma Jin sect because of Lan Qingfeng, he still felt uneasy. Although he was young, he was extremely smart. The incident that happened on the day of the Wangshan tribulation was still vivid in his mind. In his impression, the people from Ma Jin sect were all very dangerous. Now that Sansan was trapped, it was hard for him to be completely at ease. Chu Liyue did not say anything. She tapped her fingers lightly on the armrest. In fact, she had been thinking about this problem along the way. If they just waited like this and did nothing, they would be too passive. However, at the moment, they did not seem to have a suitable solution. This time, Mo Yun was determined to get some information from Sansan. He would not let Sansan go so easily. Master. At this moment, a pleasant voice was heard. Then an enchanting and gorgeous figure floated in from the door. Master. You're finally back. Little Hachi missed you so much. As Little Hachi spoke, her body swayed as she floated towards Chu Liyue. She was about to throw herself into Chu Liyue's arms. Chu Liyue's mouth twitched. Rong Xiu looked up slightly. Little Hachi felt a chill at the back of her head and subconsciously paused. How could I forget that this person is also here? However, Little Hachi quickly regained her composure. She turned around and retracted her foot. Colored ropes fluttered in the air as broken jade collided with each other. Only her white and eye-catching waist was exposed. She walked lightly to Chu Liyue's side. Master, Little Hachi misses you so much. Chu Liyue looked at her and kindly reminded her. Little Hachi, there are 2 marks on your face from sleeping. Although it was very shallow. But on that magnificent face, it was too conspicuous. Little Hachi was shocked. She instantly widened her eyes and covered her face. Really? Chu Liyue lifted his chin. Ask Yan Qing. Yan Qing was standing opposite Little Hachi. He could see her just by looking up. Actually, Chu Liyue said this on purpose. After all, in a sense, Little Hachi and Yan Qing were already old enemies. Little Hachi could disregard her image in front of the 13 Yu guards, but she would never lose face in front of her enemy. As expected, after hearing Chu Liyue's words, Little Hachi's eyes became even more frightened. She subconsciously looked up at Yan Qing. Yan Qing sensed the dangerous warning in her eyes. He thought for a moment and spoke gently, which was rare of him. The green wooden pillow is gentle and has the effect of sleeping. If Miss Little Hachi is worried about leaving marks after sleeping for too long, you can cover them with the cloud weaving brocade. The cloud weaving brocade is delicate and exquisite. I think it won't harm Little Hachi's skin. Yan Qing couldn't finish the second half of his sentence. Little Hachi seemed to have suffered a great blow. She held her heart with one hand and stepped back continuously. You win. Little Hachi said in disbelief. Then she quickly turned around and ran away. Before anyone could say anything, she had already floated around like a butterfly and disappeared without a trace. She really couldn't stay in this place any longer. The hall was completely silent. Yan Qing's lips moved slightly. His handsome and cold eyes were slightly furrowed. He spoke quite politely just now. Why did it seem like he offended her again? Chu Liyue looked at Yan Qing with sympathy and admiration. It was also the first time she met a man who could make Little Hachi run away in anger. He was really amazing. The remaining people, including Wu Yao, all looked at him with admiration. It was always Little Hachi who bullied them. When had they ever seen Little Hachi being humiliated repeatedly? Lord Yan Qing was indeed the saint's confidant. His methods and wisdom were indeed extraordinary. Chu Liyue gave Rong Xiu a look. His Highness has always been good at wooing his wife. How did he bring up such an insensitive man? Rong Xiu was calm and collected. I was not only good at wooing his wife. However, Yan Qing was a blockhead in this aspect. He shouldn't have placed any hopes on him. Chu Liyue was speechless. Sometimes people should be a little more humble. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. He was somewhat suspicious. Am I not humble enough? Perhaps I should help you, deepen her impression? Chu Liyue choked. She was defeated again. There were some people she really couldn't beat. She should have known that she couldn't compete with Rong Xiu in this aspect. She coughed and tactfully changed the topic. Ink Sword Sect has sent a few people to secretly monitor the Yu residence. These people will stay in the residence for the time being. As for Sansan, we'll act according to the situation. The few people looked at each other. At present, this seemed to be the most suitable choice. Yes. Ink Sword Sect. In the study, Mo Yun was sitting behind the table, leaning against the chair with his eyes closed. He seemed to be resting. However, there was a person in front of him who was respectfully kneeling on one knee and saying something. After a while, Mo Yun finally opened his eyes. "That's all?" That person immediately said. "Vice Sect Master, that's all. There has always been a barrier outside the U residence. Our people can't get too close to avoid alerting the enemy." Mo Yun nodded, but his expression was even colder. After returning this morning, he asked Sanson a lot of questions. However, he was very dissatisfied with Sanson's answers. As long as he asked what happened inside the barrier, Sanson's description was very vague. No matter how Mo Yun asked, he insisted that he didn't know. He said that he didn't do anything from the beginning to the end. He was inexplicably pulled in and thrown out. As for why the situation changed later, he had no idea. He was obviously not telling the truth. Mo Yun wanted to investigate the situation in the U residence. However, it sounded like everything was normal in the U residence. "You can leave first. Continue to monitor. If there are any abnormalities, report immediately." Mo Yun waved his hand. That person responded. Suddenly he thought of something and said, "That's right, Vice Sect Master. A few days ago, the new people in the U residence seemed to have an unusual relationship with Third Boss. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. If your place is considered crude, then wouldn't my place be a thatched hut? I was really too tired, so I fell asleep." Mo Yun did not pay attention to his words. His sharp eyes stared intently at him as he kept thinking. Sanson was actually able to sleep in this place. Was it because she was too confident, or did she really have a clear conscience? "Third Boss, there's no need to be so modest. I've heard that your U manor is also extremely elegant and wealthy. Alright, I heard that a few friends of Third Boss came a few days ago? Why haven't I heard you mention it?" Sanson's heart sank. It turned out that Mo Yun came for this. He was obviously suspicious of the identity of his master, otherwise he would never ask such a question. Sanson's thoughts turned, but his expression was still very natural. He smiled and said, "Oh, you mean my big brother and the others?" "Yes. I specially invited them to come this time. After coming to Peach Blossom Dock, I relied on you to do some business. I wanted to invite them over to have a look, and let them know that I'm doing well here." This was basically the truth. So Sanson said it very sincerely. Even Mo Yun could not see anything wrong with it. After becoming rich, it was normal to invite one's family and friends over for a gathering. Mo Yun pondered for a moment. "Those few, are all your brothers and sisters?" Sanson smiled from ear to ear. "Yes, they're all my brothers and sisters. But we're very close." Mo Yun narrowed his eyes and suddenly laughed. "But why did I hear that there are two of them who are very unusual? Even Third Boss has to be respectful?" "You manner." Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu returned to the room. She pondered for a moment and still chose to summon the black shield. As expected, the shield had become heavier now. Chu Luiyue was almost certain that when the rust on it was completely peeled off, the engraved secret text would be completely revealed. Then this thing would reveal its true appearance. Now only a few pieces had fallen off and it was already so heavy. It was almost hard to imagine how it would feel to hold it in her hand when all the rust was gone. Chu Luiyue even suspected that when the time came, if she still had her current strength, she was afraid that she could not even lift it. "Rong Xiu, do you recognize the secret text on it?" Chu Luiyue looked up and asked. Rong Xiu walked over, his deep eyes stared at the shallow dent for a while and shook his head. "I can't see it." Chu Luiyue was a little disappointed, but in fact this was also within her expectations. "Why this shield? What's wrong with it?" Looking at her solemn expression, there was a hint of worry between her eyebrows. Rong Xiu reached out his hand and gently smoothed the faint wrinkles between her eyebrows. Chu Luiyue was silent for a moment and then nodded seriously. She pointed at the black shield with a headache. "I think I have to turn the entire Peach Blossom Dock upside down." Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. "Literally?" Chu Luiyue nodded with difficulty. "Literally. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 1874. Before Chu Luiyue could start to search the Peach Blossom Dock, trouble had already come knocking on their door. Because the people from Black Sword Sect had come. And it was Mo Yun who came personally. And with him there was also Sanson. Previously he had wanted to ask Sanson something, but Sanson was very tactful and could speak very well. No matter how he talked, he could not tell which sentence was the truth. In the end, Mo Yun decided to make a trip himself. His decision was very sudden. When he brought Sanson to U Manor, the servants of Black Sword sect who were secretly in charge of monitoring were all stunned. But at this time, Mo Yun was too lazy to care about that. Seeing Sanson return, everyone in Yu Manor was very surprised. The news quickly spread to Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu's ears. The two immediately understood. They came with ill intentions. Looks like Mo Yun did not get the answer he wanted from Sanson. Chu Luiyue muttered. Rong Xiu nodded. This time he should be coming for us. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Previously, she and Rong Xiu disguised themselves as servants and followed Sanson around, so they should not have revealed any flaws. Now that Mo Yun came, did he suddenly know something? Looks like this time, we don't have to bother with any disguises. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Mo Yun wanted to see the real them. The moment Mo Yun stepped into Yu Manor, he felt that this place was very strange. There were not many servants in the manor, but there was an indescribable pressure everywhere. Walking here, he always felt like he was being watched by someone in the dark. This feeling made him very uncomfortable, but also made him even more certain of his previous guess. Sanson's Yu Manor, there were indeed many secrets hidden here. The two of them walked all the way to the main hall. Sanson was already drenched in cold sweat. Go invite Big Brother and the others over. Before he finished speaking, a tall and slender green figure had already slowly arrived. It is my Yu Manor's honor to have an esteemed guest. The voice was light and calm, with an inexplicable aura that made people feel at ease. Was Tsini? Sanson raised his head to look. When he saw that familiar face, his wildly beating heart immediately calmed down a lot. Big Brother? He hurriedly stood up and walked towards Tsini. In fact, he had a lot of things he wanted to say, but Mo Yun was behind him at this time, so he could only swallow those words. Big Brother, this is Black Sword Sect's Vice Sect Leader, Lord Mo Yun. Vice Sect Leader Mo, this is my big brother. Sanson stood in the middle and gave a simple introduction to the two. Tsini nodded slightly at Mo Yun. I am Tsini. Greetings, Vice Sect Master. Mo Yun scrutinized the man in front of him. He looked to be in his 20s and wore a green robe, looking magnanimous and upright. His eyes were narrow and indifferent, revealing a bit of coldness. Such magnanimity was indeed not something an ordinary person could possess. No wonder he could make the sophisticated Sanson so obedient. Third boss, didn't a few people come to your Yu Manor a few days ago? Why is there only one person here? Mo Yun dusted his clothes with a faint arrogance on his face. I came to visit personally. Could it be that you're not even willing to give me this face? Sanson was in a difficult position when Tsini spoke indifferently. Wu Yao and the rest are in the backyard. I've already informed them to come over. Vice Sect Leader Mo, please wait for a moment. As soon as he finished speaking, someone came outside the door. Big Brother. Is there a distinguished guest? The one who spoke was Wu Yao. He looked like he had just finished punching and his head was still sweating. Yu Jiu was with him. He was holding a wooden sword in his hand. Tsini glanced at it. Perhaps it was because he had been using it a little hard these few days, but Yu Jiu's wooden sword already had obvious traces of wear and tear. Looks like I'll have to change it later. Tsini thought silently in his heart. This is Vice Sect Leader Mo of Black Sword Sect. He raised his hand. Wu Yao and Yu Jiu immediately understood and bowed respectfully. So you're Vice Sect Leader Mo. Sorry for the disrespect. We've long heard of your great name, but we didn't expect you to come personally today. Everything else aside, Wu Yao and the rest were very clear about what to do. Their current identities were just Sanson's friends, so they naturally had to curry favor with Mo Yun. Mo Yun's gaze swept across the two of them, disapproving in his heart. Compared to Tsini, who had appeared first, these two were indeed not very pleasing to the eye. Not long after, Shifang also arrived. Mo Yun finally couldn't help but frown. Why are there mud spots on this person's pants? Shifang, who had just finished cleaning up the vegetable garden and was inexplicably despised, had an innocent look on his face. Didn't he just want to eat some of the vegetables he grew? Why did this Vice Sect leader have to show such a look of disdain? However, the other party's status was noble, so he could only suppress his dissatisfaction for now. He looked at Tsini. Big Brother, Sister 8 has gone into seclusion to cultivate. I'm afraid she won't be able to come for a while. Tsini nodded in understanding. When the few people present heard this, they all revealed expressions of understanding. They had known little Hachi for so long, but they had never heard of her going into seclusion to cultivate. It was most likely that she had been angered by Yan Qing, so she went to take a bubble bath and sleep. 13th Yu was very clear about her temper, so they weren't surprised. Mo Yun originally wanted to ask more, but his expression suddenly froze. It was 13 who had come in. Sanson hurriedly said. 13th brother, why aren't you greeting Vice Sect Leader Mo? 13 obediently bowed, then stood behind Shifeng. Mo Yun's gaze, however, stayed on him for quite a while. Boss-san, your 13th brother seems to be quite talented. If he can enter Ink Sword Sect to cultivate, he will definitely achieve great things in the future. Sanson's heart skipped a beat. He knew that 13 had almost been snatched away by Ink Sword Sect when he went out to break through. Why did Mo Yun also seem to be very interested in 13 now that he was here? 13's talent was quite good, but what did that have to do with them? Haha, thank you for the compliment, Vice Sect Leader Mo. It's his honor to be appreciated by you. But 13 is still young and he has been following Big Brother and the others for so many years. I'm afraid he won't be able to get used to it. Sanson politely rejected Mo Yun's suggestion. Mo Yun's eyes narrowed slightly. Sanson was a smart person. He had already made it so obvious just now. Anyone with a brain would go with the flow and send him to Ink Sword Sect. There were so many people in Peach Blossom Cove who wanted to enter Ink Sword Sect but couldn't. Now that he took the initiative to ask, Sanson rejected him? Sanson's back was already soaked in cold sweat. But he didn't dare and didn't want to send 13 out. Even if he sensed the hidden warning in Mo Yun's eyes, he still braced himself and chose to reject. Mo Yun paused for a moment, but didn't continue to dwell on this matter. He looked around. Except for that little Hachi, Boss-san, is everyone here? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1875. Sanson choked. Of course not everyone was here. He also knew that Mo Yun was here for his master and the rest. But, Vice Sect Leader Mo, please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. At this moment, a clear voice with a smile was heard. Mo Yun seemed to have sensed something and looked up. Two figures were walking in hand. The one who spoke was a woman in a red dress that outlined her slender and exquisite figure. Her long black hair was tied up neatly. Her face was beautiful and unparalleled. What made one's heart sway the most was that pair of black jade-like eyes. They were calm and indifferent. As her eyes moved, it was as if there were thousands of stars sprinkling down, shining brightly. At this moment, her red lips were slightly curled up with a faint smile. The moment she entered, almost all the scenery around her was overshadowed. Except for the man beside her. His white clothes were whiter than snow, and he looked like an immortal. His face was noble and enchanting, revealing a noble aura in his bones. Just by standing there one could only look up to him. These two were top-notch figures. When they stood together they could easily steal everyone's attention. Mo Yun stared at the two of them and slowly clenched his fists. With just one look he knew that his previous guess was right. These two. They were definitely the two people that Sanson was very respectful to as mentioned by his subordinates. When he saw Tsuni earlier, he already felt that he could not be underestimated. Now that he saw the two of them, this feeling became even stronger. But for some reason he had a strange feeling in his heart. It was as if he had seen these two people somewhere before. You are? He was about to speak when another figure suddenly rushed in from outside. Hearing the hurried footsteps, Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu also turned to look. The person who came was Yan Qing. However, at this moment, his face that had always been indifferent like an iceberg was actually frowning, and it carried a trace of anxiety and nervousness. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt a faint uneasiness in his heart. Yan Qing had always been calm and rarely revealed such an expression. Could it be that something had happened? Your Highness, someone is coming. Yan Qing stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Everyone present was flabbergasted. At this time, who would come to the Yu Manor? And judging from the situation, it didn't look good. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Who? Yan Qing made a fist salute. The Nan family. At this moment, Nan Yuxing had just led his men into the Peach Blossom Dock. Accompanying him were the 8 elders of the Nan family as well as Luo Yan. Although the number of elders in the Nan family was not small, sending out 8 of them at once was really not a lot. Moreover, it was the Peach Blossom Dock that was thousands of miles away. So this is the so-called Peach Blossom Dock. As Nan Yuxing walked forward, he looked at his surroundings. His eyes were extremely cold, and there was a faint blood-red color in his eyes, which made people feel uneasy. But what was even more frightening was the aura on his body. In just a few short months, not only had he recovered, he had even broken through to become a god. Although the people on the street did not know them, They could sense that this group of people was not to be trifled with, so they all retreated. There had been too many things happening in the Peach Blossom dock recently, and ordinary people did not dare to get involved. They really know how to choose a place. Nan Yuxing sneered with a hint of mockery. Luo Yen followed silently, his eyes slightly lowered, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Only the dark circles under his eyes showed that he had not been living well recently. The remaining 8 elders also followed without saying a word. The atmosphere was tense and there was a strong killing intent. Anyone could tell that they were here to cause trouble. Many people on the street moved away and they muttered in secret. These people were powerful and they were filled with killing intent. No one knew who had offended them. Soon everyone knew the answer. Because Nan Yuxing and his group had directly arrived at the Yu Manor. This caused many people who were watching in secret to be shocked. Third boss luck was really bad recently. First, he was entangled with the Black Sword sect and was locked up for a long time. Now his enemies came to find him. With such a lineup, a fierce battle was unavoidable. Nan Yuxing and his group stood in front of the door. Tell your master to come out and die. When Chu Luiyue and her group came out, they saw such a scene. Nan Yuxing and his group were blocking the door. They came aggressively and their killing intent was dense. The people of the Yu Manor had already gathered and formed a defensive line. But compared to the people on the other side, their momentum was obviously weaker. There were 10 people on the other side and 6 of them were venerables. And Nan Yuxing was one of them. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly, and she looked at Nan Yuxing suspiciously. Then she relaxed and smiled. I was wondering who it was. So it's young Master Nan. It seems that your body has recovered recently? Her words were like rubbing salt on Nan Yuxing's wound. His face twisted for a moment and then he laughed out of anger. What? Are you disappointed that I'm not dead? Chu Luiyue shook her head sincerely. That's not it. I'm just curious. If you don't want to say it, don't say it. She really wanted to know how Nan Yuxing managed to recover and make a breakthrough in such a short period of time after all his yuan meridians were broken. Even she might not have the ability to do so. Nan Yuxing sneered. Shengguan Yu Rongxiu. You killed my sister and now you're still laughing? Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu looked at each other. Nanny? When did they kill her? Behind them, Mo Yun, who only wanted to take a look, instantly changed his expression when he heard these words. Those 2 people. Digression. It's the end of the year and there are more things to do at home. Also, Kan Ka is not feeling well. After sorting out the details in the morning, there are even fewer. Make up for it at 6 p.m. Love mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1876. Nan Yuxing, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. We haven't seen Nanny since we parted ways at the God-slaying tomb. How can we kill her? Chu Luiyue realized that there was a big misunderstanding. Her eyes turned cold as she clarified word by word. Although she wasn't afraid of others finding trouble with her, she didn't want to be blamed for something unrelated to her. However, Nan Yuxing seemed to have heard a joke. He suddenly raised his hand and criticized in a sharp voice. Her corpse was found in the forest not far from the Yuntian Tower. She died not long after your wedding. Do you dare to say that this matter has nothing to do with you? Nan Yuxing was furious. Some time ago he didn't pay much attention to other things because of his health. He didn't even know that Nanny went to the Yuntian Tower during Rongxiu and Chu Liyue's wedding. If he knew at that time, he would definitely stop her. When he asked about Nanny's situation again, he received news that she was already dead. The time, place and all the clues pointed to the Yuntian Tower. In his heart, he was certain that Nanny's sudden visit had angered Rongxiu and the others. Not only did they refuse to let her in, they even chose to kill her in the end. As her elder brother, how could he not take revenge for this? Looking at the furious Nan Yuxing, Chu Luiyue almost laughed out loud. Ridiculous and laughable. This was the biggest feeling she had after listening to him. It seemed that although Nan Yuxing's body had recovered, his brain wasn't working well. Nan Yuxing, you said it yourself. She died outside the Yuntian Tower after our wedding. Then I'd like to ask, what does this have to do with us? Also, you have to pay attention to evidence. Since you're so sure, what evidence can you produce? Nan Yuxing sneered. He knew that these people wouldn't admit it. But it didn't matter. He looked at Luo Yen beside him. Uncle Luo Yen, as expected, they refused to admit it. Sorry to trouble you. Luo Yen nodded and looked at Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue. Just now he was standing half a step behind Nan Yuxing with his head slightly lowered. Chu Luiyue didn't pay much attention to him. At this time he raised his head and Chu Luiyue and the others finally saw his appearance clearly. They couldn't help but be shocked. Unlike the high-spirited man they had seen in the god-slaying mound, the Luo Yin standing in front of them now was a completely different person. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes were bloodshot, and his stubble was a little messy. He looked very haggard. At first glance, it was as if he had experienced a huge blow. I was the one who accompanied Yi to the Yintian Tower that day. Luo Yin spoke with a coarse and hoarse voice as if he had not spoken for a long time. After we were rejected by the Yintian Tower, I persuaded Yi to go back. Yi listened to me and agreed to go back to the Nan family with me. At that time she was in a bad mood, so we planned to find a place to rest in the nearby mountains. But who knew that not long after we arrived, someone would sneak up on us. He paused and there seemed to be something surging in his eyes. Although the attacker hid very well, I saw the totem he summoned when he attacked. It was undoubtedly the totem of the Yintian Tower. Nan Yuxing had heard about this from Luo Yin before, but when he heard it again he was still furious. He stared at Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu, and there seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. He couldn't wait to cut them into pieces. You heard it? This is the evidence you want. What else do you have to say? If it wasn't the people from the Yintian Tower, who else could it be? Compared to Nan Yuxing's anger and madness, Rong Xiu's expression was too calm. He nodded. Other than this, what else? Nan Yuxing's lungs were about to explode. Rong Xiu, what do you mean by that? Don't you think this irrefutable evidence is enough? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. It's just one side of the story. How can it be considered irrefutable evidence? You, Luo Yin, I want to ask you. Other than you and Nan Yi, was there anyone else who was with you that day? Rong Xiu ignored Nan Yuxing as he directly looked at Luo Yin and questioned him. Luo Yin slowly clenched his fists. No. But what I said just now is indeed the truth. Chu Luiyue chuckled. What you said is the truth and what others said is a lie. Senior Luo Yin, I know that we offended you in the god-slaying tomb and you are unhappy with us. But, you don't have to go to such lengths to frame us, right? You said that our people attacked you. What's the reason? As she spoke, she glanced at Nan Yuxing meaningfully. I think you are the ones who really want to kill us, right? He had never seen someone who could not forget something after winning a fight. Was it necessary? You. Luo Yin was furious. But Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue's rebuttal was indeed reasonable. Just his words alone were not enough to convince everyone. Rong Xiu asked again. Luo Yin, you said that the people who attacked us that day were from the Yintian Tower. If this is true, then, we should kill the two of you. Since Nan Yi is already dead, then, how did you appear here? Rong Xiu's words made Luo Yin even more speechless. I fainted at that time. When I woke up again, a long time had passed, and Yi was already, or on the mountain outside the Yintian Tower? Chu Luiyue asked. Cold sweat broke out on Luo Yan's forehead. It's that, at this point he finally realized that something was wrong. If it was really the people from the Yintian Tower who did it, there was no reason for them to kill Nan Yi alone but leave him alive. Moreover, why was it still in that place? No matter how bad it was, they should have changed the location. Could it be that the person who ambushed them just wanted to kill Nan Yi there? After Luo Yin woke up, he saw Nan Yi's miserable state of death, which was almost deformed. At that time he was blinded by anger and only wanted to take revenge on the Yintian Tower, so he quickly rushed back to the Nan family and discussed revenge with Nan Yuxing, who had just recovered. After asking around, they found out that Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue had come to Peach Blossom Dock. Without saying anything, they directly brought the elders here. But when he heard the other party's question, Luo Yin finally realized that things were not what he had imagined. But it seemed a little too late to say this now. Uncle Luo Yin. Nan Yuxing shouted and woke Luo Yin up. Don't listen to these people's excuses. Other than them, who else in this world would be so ruthless to Yi? Swoosh. The blade glinted coldly. Nan Yuxing held the blade with both hands and pointed it at Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu. Must be you guys. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1877. Nan Yuxing had already gone crazy. He had experienced too many things during this period of time, and it had long exceeded his tolerance. Previously, because his Yuan meridian was broken, he was disheartened and wanted to die. Later, his father finally found an expert to help him recover his Yuan meridian, and he even took the opportunity to successfully break through and become a supreme god. He was overjoyed. However, just as he was about to share this with Nan Yi, he heard the sad news that Nan Yi was already dead. Because the damage to her body was too severe, Nan Yifan directly chose to bury her. Nan Yuxing didn't even have time to take one last look at her. Nan Yi was his only sister, and the person he doted on the most. Now that she was suddenly gone, how could he accept it? Thus he was filled with thoughts of revenge. Only by killing Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue could he dispel the hatred in his heart. As for Luo Yan's hesitation, he didn't care at all. He was already certain that Nan Yi had died in their hands, and no one would be able to change his mind no matter who came to persuade him. Rong Xiu's eyes were cold. Nan Yuxing, who do you think you are pointing a knife at? His voice was as cold and low as usual, but at this moment, it inexplicably carried a heavy pressure that was difficult to defy. Nan Yuxing instinctively looked at Rong Xiu. When he met those cold and deep phoenix eyes, his heart suddenly trembled. Intense uneasiness and fear almost uncontrollably surged from the depths of his heart. That was a sense of danger. But these emotions were quickly suppressed by him. Fear? What was there to fear? Today he had brought several elders with him and he only had one goal, to kill Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue and avenge Yi. Thinking of this, he smiled coldly. Rong Xiu, put away your airs as the chosen saint. This is Peach Blossom Cove, not your Yuntian Tower. Before he came, he had already asked around. This time, Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue came very low-key. Rong Xiu only brought one confidant with him, and although Chu Luiyue brought many people with her, they were all her former subordinates and weren't a threat. Rong Xiu was powerful and Chu Luiyue wasn't to be underestimated, but 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Now that they were facing each other, their chances of winning. This is indeed not the Yuntian Tower. But this is the Yu residence. How dare you? Without waiting for Rong Xiu to say anything, Chu Luiyue spoke first. The sharp blade cut through the void. She had already grasped Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly in her hand. Looking at Nan Yuxing's expression, there was no point in saying anything. The only solution was to solve this problem. Seeing Chu Luiyue draw her sword, many scenes from the god-slaying tomb surfaced in Nan Yuxing's mind. This woman's strength was much stronger than she appeared to be. Nan A shook his head and frowned, trying to get rid of those messy thoughts. There was nothing to worry about. No matter how strong she was just a high god. How could she possibly be a match for these gods? Thinking of this, Nan Yuxing's confidence was boosted. An eye for an eye. Today I will take revenge for Yi. Before he could finish his sentence, Nan A made his move. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth started to gather towards him, and finally, it all flowed into the saber in his hand. His aura surged and the force in his body was almost boiling. The sky quickly darkened. The full force attack of a high god was not to be underestimated. Soul-breaking saber. As Nane shouted, the long saber in his hand slashed downwards. Along with a sharp whistling sound, a blood-red saber light flew out. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch. On the ground there was also a deep rut. The stone slabs cracked. Rong Xiu lifted his wrist and was about to make his move, but Luo Yan beat him to it and rushed towards him. At the same time, the 8 elders behind them also made their moves. The crowd moved according to their thoughts, and in the blink of an eye, they hovered in midair and surrounded Chu Luiyue and the rest, who were standing at the door. Nane had 10 people on his side. Although it was not as many as the entire Yu residence, they had more high gods. Everyone in the Yu residence was on high alert and formed a human wall. However, compared to the high gods, they were still slightly inferior. The saber was about to reach. A violent wind with a biting cold murderous aura surged towards them. Chu Luiyue's sleeves were swept up by the wind. She frowned slightly, and her feet slightly staggered. Then she bent her knees slightly and leaped up. She went straight towards Nane Xing's saber light. Scarlet Cloud Sword. Chu Luiyue slashed down with her sword. The 2 forces collided. Boom. Terrifying turbulence spread out in all directions. Master. 13 shouted anxiously and subconsciously took half a step forward. Tani glanced at him. 13 seemed to have sensed something and immediately stopped and woke up. He could not go over. With his current strength, not only would he not be of any help, he would only cause trouble. The only thing he could do was to wait here and not cause trouble for his master. He looked anxiously at Tani. Big brother, the only one who could help now was his big brother, Qi. A gust of cold wind suddenly attacked them from behind. Tani's eyes turned cold and he immediately turned around. With a wave of his sleeves, a tyrannical aura blocked the sneak attack outside. Sanson's eyes widened and he was still in shock. Vice Leader Mo. What are you doing? He actually took advantage of the time when they were not paying attention to attack. Mo Yun suddenly sneered. I was wondering who it was. Rongxiu Shangguanyu. I didn't expect you to come to me on your own accord. Digression, I won't trouble everyone to wait today. I'll update tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1878. If he could kill the two of them on the spot, not only would he be able to make up for what happened to Lan Qingfeng, but he would also be able to gain the favor of the sect leader and rise to the next level. His status would not be able to rise any further, but he would have plenty of opportunities and resources in other aspects. Mo Yun had only heard of the two of them before, but he did not expect that they would take the initiative to come to him. Sanson's heart sank when he heard Mo Yun's words. Mo Yun seemed to have the intention to kill Master and His Highness? But Ink Sword Sect had no enmity with them, so why? Before he could figure it out, Mo Yun suddenly flew up. At the same time, a bamboo tube appeared in his hand. He pulled it hard without hesitation. Swoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air. Boom! A firework suddenly exploded in the sky. The firework was the special totem of Ink Sword Sect with two swords surrounding the moon. Sanson's eyes widened and he blurted out, "Oh no!" He was summoning the entire Black Sword Sect. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. In just a few breaths, the Yu Mansion had become the target of everyone's attack. Although it was still daytime, the firework was still bright and dazzling. It stayed in the sky for a long time and did not dissipate. Sanson cursed in his heart. Why did Ink Sword Sect come at this time? Mo Yun. We have never offended Ink Sword Sect, so why are you hitting us when we are down? Sanson questioned sternly. Mo Yun looked at him from above. To be precise, he was looking at the group of people. Boss Sanson, you can't blame me for this. In the past 2 years, you have contributed a lot to Ink Sword Sect. If you turn over a new leaf, I can still spare your life. After all, he could not bear to part with the treasures in the small space. Sanson spat when he heard that. This Mo Yun is too shameless. He took so many of his things for nothing, and in the end he still acted like he was giving alms. If it was not to earn some money for Master, he would not have to stay in Peach Blossom Dock and suffer Ink Sword Sect's anger for so long. Now, Mo Yun turned his back on him and even planned to attack Master. He naturally did not have to endure it anymore. Mo Yun, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror and see what you look like now? I still haven't settled the score with you for robbing so many of my treasures. Now you want to bully my master? Do you really think I'm dead? Sanson was usually all smiles and rarely showed any displeasure to others, let alone speak vulgarities. At this moment his sudden outburst shocked many people. Mo Yun was stupefied at first. Only after that did he react. Sanson was scolding him. His expression immediately became extremely ugly. 33. He's refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Sanson sneered, one hand on her waist, the other pointed at Mo Yun and scolded, Motherf ***, you don't even know my name. You still have the nerve to clamor here? I'm really giving you face. Mo Yun had never been pointed at and scolded like this before. For a moment he actually couldn't think of any words to refute. He was so angry that his entire body trembled. You. He was so angry that he laughed. Good. Since you've said so, then today my Black Sword Sect will not show you any mercy. The death of 133 was indeed a heavy loss to them. But as long as they could take down Chu Luiyue and Rongxiu, the rest was not important. Swoosh swoosh. Just as the two sides were confronting each other, several people rushed out from the surroundings. They were the people who were in charge of secretly monitoring the Yu residents. Other than that, there were several figures rushing over from afar. They were also from the Black Sword Sect. Just now, when Mo Yun sent out the signal, the people from the Black Sword Sect immediately rushed over. Looking at the constantly gathering figures and the surging killing intent in the air, Nan Yuxing was first shocked, then he sneered. Shangguanyu? Rongxiu. Looks like your enemy is not only my Nan family. To be able to meet people who wanted to kill them in such a place, it could be seen that their arrogance had offended many people. Chu Luiyue knitted her brows slightly and quickly looked up. The people from the Black Sword Sect were indeed rushing over. Mo Yun had made up his mind to make a move on them. He did not even care about 33 anymore. For a moment, Chu Luiyue's mind raced. She did not remember that she and Rongxiu had offended the people from the Black Sword Sect. They only knew about the existence of the Black Sword Sect after coming to the Peach Blossom Dock. During this period of time, the Black Sword Sect had frequently found trouble with 33, but they had endured it. Who knew that when Mo Yun heard their name, his attitude would suddenly change 180 degrees. No matter what, he wanted to take their lives. There was nothing to be afraid of if they were to face Nan Yuxing alone. Even if Nan Yuxing brought a few supreme gods with him this time, they might not lose. After all, the Yu residence was 33's territory. Moreover, they still had many trump cards in their hands. Once they fought, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. But, now that the Black Sword sect was involved, things would be troublesome. Although the Black Sword sect had suffered heavy losses in the Azure Peak, they had a large number of people and did not care about these losses. The Black Sword sect was like an overlord in the Peach Blossom Dock. If they were determined to kill them all, the situation would not be optimistic. Although the people of the Yu residence were strong, they were definitely not a match for those people. Clang. Chu Luiyue waved her wrist and deflected Nan Yuxing's saber. Nan Yuxing's hand went numb and the saber in his hand almost fell from the impact. He was shocked and angry. The woman in front of him was clearly only a high god, but her sword just now was not much weaker than his. Nan Yuxing's face turned green and white. If he lost in this situation where he was sure to win, he would not have the face to continue living in this world. When he thought of Nan Yi's death, the anger in his chest surged even more crazily. All of you deserve to die. He shouted sternly and charged towards Chu Luiyue again. Chu Luiyue's eyes flickered and she had already made a decision in her heart. She sidestepped and dodged the saber. Then, without any hesitation, she took a deep breath and turned around, heading towards a certain direction quickly. Her movements were extremely agile and her speed was far beyond everyone's expectations. Originally, the few elders of the Nan family wanted to go forward and block her, but before they could do so, that slender and exquisite figure had already passed through their encirclement. Trying to escape? Not so easy. Nan Yuxing's saber missed. How could he be satisfied? Seeing that Chu Luiyue was about to run, he immediately chased after her. Rong Xiu, who was teaching Luo Yin, tipped his toes and ran over as well. Luo Yin had no choice but to chase after them. In the blink of an eye, the four figures were already far away. The people who were left behind looked at each other. Where were they going? Mo Yun clenched his fists and immediately followed at full speed. Today, no matter where they ran to, their lives were going to be his. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1879. Chu Luiyue was extremely fast. However, Nan Yuxing was already a supreme god expert. He was still faster than her when he went at full speed. The distance between the two was shrinking. I want to see where you can run to today. Nan Yuxing's expression was cold and ferocious. His desire for revenge had almost swallowed him up. At this moment he couldn't hear anything and couldn't see anything. All he could think of was to kill Chu Luiyue. She was Rong Xiu's wife and the person that Rong Xiu treasured the most. If he killed her, it would be more painful than killing Rong Xiu directly. Therefore, from the beginning, Nan Yuxing's first target was Chu Luiyue. Soon they left the city and came to the mountain range. Looking around, there were pink and white peach blossoms in full bloom everywhere. The air was filled with the rich fragrance of peach blossoms. It was a lively scene. Nan Yuxing didn't think so. Does Chu Luiyue think that she can use this steep and winding mountain range to hide from me by escaping here? Naive. Before coming to Peach Blossom Dock, he had already investigated the situation here. Mysterious, dangerous, unknown, chaotic. However, he didn't take it to heart. He came here just to kill two people. How much time and effort could he waste? Once the matter was settled, he could just leave. Peach Blossom Dock. What was there to worry about? Besides, from what he saw, there was nothing special about this place except for the rich energy of heaven and earth and the beautiful scenery. Nan Yuxing casually looked around and quickly retracted his gaze. The distance between him and Chu Luiyue was still shrinking. At this rate, in less than half an hour he would be able to, whoosh. A reddish-gold figure suddenly appeared beside Chu Luiyue. With a flap of its huge wings, the blazing flames caused the temperature of the surroundings to rise in an instant. Reddish-gold heavenly phoenix. Chu Luiyue lightly jumped onto Dumpling. She gently patted Dumpling's head. Let's go. Bang. A clear chime instantly spread across the area. In an instant, the countless magical beasts in the forest below all knelt on the ground and looked at the figure in the sky in awe. The distance between the two sides widened again. Nan Yuxing's heart was filled with hatred. She had actually forgotten that she had such a contracted divine beast. With the help of the crimson gold celestial phoenix, it would be much easier for her to escape. Nan Yuxing's figure did not stop as he madly circulated the origin power in his body. Then silver-white lightning flashed under his feet. His speed also began to increase at a rate visible to the naked eye. After Chu Luiyue and Nan Yuxing, it was Rong Xiu and Luo Yan. At first, Luo Yan was only worried that Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue would join hands and Nan Yuxing wouldn't be a match for them. After all, Rong Xiu was also a supreme god. However, he soon realized that something was amiss. Rong Xiu didn't seem to be going at full speed. It wasn't obvious at first, but as time passed, the distance between Rong Xiu and Nan Yuxing didn't change at all. Only then did Luo Yan realize that Rong Xiu's goal didn't seem to be to chase after Nan Yuxing. Rong Xiu was a genuine supreme god expert. If he really wanted to chase after Nan Yuxing, why hadn't he narrowed the distance between them until now? Looking at the tall figure in white in front of him, Luo Yan realized in hindsight. Rong Xiu was actually blocking him. Every time he wanted to overtake him, Rong Xiu would appear intentionally or unintentionally and block his path, causing him to be unable to catch up. After so many times, Luo Yan finally couldn't take it anymore. Rong Xiu, you're just wasting time by blocking me here. Are you really not worried about the safety of your princess consort at all? She was a supreme god while Nan Yuxing was a supreme god. If the two of them fought, she would almost certainly lose. And according to Nan Yuxing's current state, once he caught up, he would definitely fight to the death. Not stop until he died. Rong Xiu was actually so careless. Luo Yan really felt that it was extremely strange. Didn't Rong Xiu care a lot about her when they were in the god-slaying mound earlier? Why did it seem that he didn't even care about her life now? Of course I'll protect Ai's consort. There's no need for others to worry about this. Luo Yan, if you have the time, you should think about how you're going to explain to Nan Yifan when you go back if Nan Yuxing dies in Peach Blossom Dock today. Rong Xiu stopped, turned around and stared at Luo Yan with a faint smile. That pair of deep phoenix eyes seemed to have seen through everything. Luo Yan's heart skipped a beat, and he frowned subconsciously and looked away. Master doesn't know that we're here this time. You don't have to use him to pressure us. Rong Xiu looked at him and chuckled. It was as if he had heard a joke. Nan Yifan is getting bolder. Not only did he frame Nanny's death on Yuntian Tower, he even dared to let Nan Yuxing and Luo Yan come to seek revenge. He was really not afraid of dying out. Luo Yan's heart beat even faster. For some reason he always felt that he had nowhere to hide in front of Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu was clearly much younger than him, but every time they met, Luo Yan always felt that he couldn't see through Rong Xiu. This kind of feeling rarely appeared for him. Even when he was facing Nan Yifan, he didn't feel like this. Only Rong Xiu. This man seemed to be hiding too many secrets. Just as the two of them were in a stalemate, Luo Yan heard the whistling of the wind behind him. He looked back. Mo Yun and the others were also rushing over here. Although he didn't know why Mo Yun also wanted to kill Rong Xiu and Nan Yifan, they were now on the same side. Luo Yan spoke almost without any hesitation. I'm Luo Yan of the Nan family. I wonder if Vice Sect leader Mo is interested in joining forces? Mo Yun glanced at him and nodded without any hesitation. Okay. Anyway, they had the same goal. If they could join forces, they could save some effort. The two of them directly agreed on the alliance. Mo Yun subconsciously looked at Rong Xiu, but found that his expression was still calm, as if he didn't care about this matter at all. Was he really confident or pretending? Mo Yun didn't know, and he couldn't be bothered to find out. He knew about the Nan family's reputation. Not to mention other things, the few venerable gods who came here today couldn't be underestimated. As long as the two sides joined forces, Rong Xiu and the others today, boom. A loud sound suddenly came from afar. Mo Yun and Luo Yan turned their heads to look at the same time, only to see an icy blue flame soaring into the sky from the top of a mountain. Luo Yan was confused, but Mo Yun suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed abruptly. That direction was Lan Qingfeng. Chu Luiyue actually went to Lan Qingfeng? Digression. 6 o'clock recently, the pneumonia situation has been serious. Everyone should pay more attention to hygiene and avoid crowded places. Be careful. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1880. At this time of all places, why did she have to go to Lan Qingfeng? She should know that there were many people from Black Sword sect guarding Lan Qingfeng. Even under such circumstances, she still insisted on going. A white light suddenly flashed in Mo Yun's heart. Could it be, those two people from before were you guys? Mo Yun looked at Rong Xiu in disbelief. Because of his excitement, his voice became sharp. Rong Xiao narrowed his eyes and did not say anything. However, in Mo Yun's eyes, this reaction was no different from a tacit agreement. It must be them. No wonder. No wonder from the beginning to the end, Sanson's attitude towards the two followers was very strange. No matter what, he insisted on protecting them and bringing them along. In the face of danger, Sanson's first consideration was those two people. After the incident, he was also the first to suggest that the two of them should be released. At first, Mo Yun only felt that it was a little strange, but he did not take it to heart. However, now that he thought about it, everything seemed to indicate something. The situation that day kept replaying in his mind. Mo Yun sucked in a cold breath. Perhaps the secret on Lan Qingfeng was not hidden with Sanson, but Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue. Once this thought appeared, it spread wildly in Mo Yun's heart like weeds, almost causing him to be shocked and angry. He gasped and then ran in the direction of Chu Luiyue without hesitation. The key now was definitely Chu Luiyue. Luo Yan, who was at the side, was confused by the sudden situation. This Mo Yun. Why does it seem like something terrible suddenly happened? He originally wanted to ask a few more questions, but Mo Yun had already gone over there, not giving him the time or opportunity. Looks like the situation is urgent. Luo Yan thought in his heart as he quickly followed. No matter what, it was definitely right to join forces with Mo Yun to stop them. Rong Xiao could stop one of them, but could he fight two of them? However, such optimistic thoughts were quickly shattered. Because the people behind had also caught up. The first to catch up was actually Cini. Mo Yun had just realized that something was wrong and planned to chase after Chu Luiyue when he felt a blur in front of him. A slender green figure appeared in front of him. When he saw the other party's face clearly, Mo Yun's heart thumped. This Cini was actually so secretive? The ability to catch up with him without making a sound? Was definitely a venerable god expert. But when he saw it before, he didn't notice it at all. When Luo Yan saw this scene from the side, he was also secretly shocked. He had some impression of this person. He seemed to be one of Chu Luiyue's subordinates, and he was the big brother of that group of subordinates. But didn't she say that her subordinates had followed her in the Tianling dynasty? Born outside the divine ruins world. No one cared about this group of people at all. According to the grapevine, it seemed that many people in the Yuntian Tower looked down on them. But because of Chu Luiyue's face, he barely managed to maintain a peaceful appearance. Sensing the divine aura on Sun Yi's body that could not be ignored, Luo Yan was stunned. This was a true venerable god expert. Even in the Yuntian Tower, such an existence was rare and definitely worthy of respect. How did the news from before spread? I didn't expect that Shangguan Yu would have a venerable god expert as a subordinate. Mo Yun gritted his teeth and said word by word. He did not act rashly. Because he could clearly feel that Sun Yi's strength was not inferior to his. First, there was Rong Xiao, which was already difficult enough to deal with. Now there was Sun Yi. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate again, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. Mo Yun and Luo Yan both relaxed. Someone was here. However, before the corners of their mouths could curl up, a voice came from behind, causing their expressions to stiffen. Big brother. We're not late, are we? This voice. It was talking to Cini. Mo Yun and Luo Yan looked at each other and saw deep shock in each other's eyes. Then, the two of them turned around at the same time and saw a few figures rushing over. It was Sanson and the others who were surrounded earlier. The Yu clan's 13 Yu had all arrived at the Yu residence. Even little Hachi, who was sleeping earlier, had rushed over. But other than that, there was not a single person from the Nan family or Ma Jian sect. Luo Yan glanced around and blurted out. Why are you guys here? He thought that the ones chasing after them would be. Shouldn't these people have all been dealt with? Sanson chuckled and narrowed her eyes. Why can't it be us? Since someone had already come knocking on his door, how could he still hide his strength? Of course they would give them a few slaps. Sun Yi's gaze swept across the few of them. Other than 13 who had not fought much head-on, Sanson and the others were more or less injured. However, it did not look serious. Sensing his gaze, Sanson hurriedly said, Don't worry, big brother. Most of this is the blood of the Nan family and Ma Jian sect. We're fine. Mo Yun and Luo Yan's faces darkened. What kind of words were these? Could it be that with their abilities they could really be a match for so many people? So you guys were hiding your strength too? Mo Yun's gaze was as sharp as a knife as it fiercely scraped past Sanson and the others. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth, carrying with it anger and resentment. It was fine if it was the others, but Sanson had been in front of him for so long, yet he did not realize this. To think that he had always thought that Sanson was completely under his control. Now it seemed that it was all a disguise. Boom. Another loud sound was heard. Heaven and earth shook. Everyone turned to look. The flames on Lan Qingfeng's peak were burning even more fiercely. Luo Yin and Mo Yun looked at each other. They had to rush over as soon as possible. Who knew what Chu Liwei was planning to do there? The last time Lan Qingfeng exploded, they almost failed to control him. If they were to do it again, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Mo Yun's heart was boiling with anger. In the end he chose to force his way out. Scram. At this moment Lan Qingfeng was in chaos. As soon as Chu Liwei arrived, he attracted the attention of the people who were guarding Lan Qingfeng. At this moment, Mo Lin was recuperating. The incident a few days ago had caused him a lot of trouble. Now that he had managed to save his life, he naturally seized every opportunity to recover his strength. As soon as he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately became alert. He was a little confused when he saw what was happening. He didn't recognize the beautiful woman who was rapidly approaching. However, when he saw the crimson gold fiend under her, he immediately reacted. That was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Before he could ask, the woman had already charged towards Lan Qingfeng. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1881. Molin's first reaction was to mobilize the surrounding people to chase after her. Stop her. Ever since the enchantment on Lanqing Peak was broken, Molin was ordered to guard this place with his men. Mo Yun had ordered that no one was allowed to enter this place without his permission. Therefore, when he saw Chu Liwei barging in, Molin was naturally very nervous and angry. However, the crimson gold celestial phoenix was too fast. In the blink of an eye, the crimson gold figure had broken through the surrounding people's line of defense and headed straight for Lanqing Peak. Molin was anxious and angry. He used his full speed to chase after her. At the same time, a matter suddenly appeared in his mind. Crimson gold celestial phoenix. This was an ancient divine beast. Normally, it would not have any contact with humans. However, from the current situation, the crimson gold celestial phoenix seemed to be very obedient to that woman as though it was a contracted divine beast. Wait. There was a rumor in the Divine Ruins world that a woman had contracted the crimson gold celestial phoenix. Molin suddenly opened his eyes wide. That woman was the new princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, Shengguanyu? For a moment Molin had mixed feelings. Countless questions flashed through his mind. Didn't she just get married to the saint of the Yuntian Tower, Rongxiu? Why did she suddenly appear here? Moreover, since she was here, did that mean that Rongxiu was here too? When did they come to Peach Blossom Dock? Why didn't Ink Sword Sect receive any news? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Molin's mind was in a mess. However, what made him even more uneasy was that Chu Liwei seemed to have a motive for coming here. When she came here, she brought the crimson gold celestial phoenix to Lanqing Peak without saying anything. What exactly was, boom? Just as the people of Ink Sword Sect came from all directions and planned to surround and trap Chu Liwei, the crimson gold celestial phoenix suddenly swooped down to the waist of the mountain. Then the woman waved her wrist. A faint blue flame suddenly burst out from the bottom of the mountain rock and shot up to the sky. The surging flames contained an astonishing amount of power as they spread out in all directions. Mo Lin and the others were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. They were immediately forced to stop and retreat swiftly. However, some of the scorching sparks still flew out and landed on Mo Lin and the others, causing them to feel scorching pain. Looking at the wounds that had suddenly appeared on his body, Molin was both shocked and angry, but more than that, he was confused and panicked. He hurriedly looked up, only to see that the crimson gold celestial phoenix had already charged up again, heading straight for the mountain peak. And that slender and exquisite figure stood on its back. The wind swept up her long hair and the corners of her clothes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a biting cold battle intent. As if she had sensed Molin's gaze, she suddenly turned around to take a look. Even though there was still some distance between them, Molin could still clearly see that pair of eyes in that instant. Black as ink, bright as the stars. Mo Lin's footsteps hesitated for a moment. An indescribable sense of danger welled up in his heart. He did not know where this feeling came from, but it was very deep. Clearly, the other party was a high god expert like him. Logically speaking, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if she had the crimson gold celestial phoenix, they had so many people on their side. At this moment, Chu Liwei raised her hand again. Boom. Another loud sound was heard. At another location halfway up the mountain, a second ball of flames burst out. Molin's heart felt as if it had been hammered by something. At this moment, he suddenly realized that Chu Luiyue seemed to be able to control the flames on Langkingfeng Peak as she wished. Previously, the flames that had been burning for a few days had finally been extinguished and returned to the cracked mountain rocks. Now that she had made her move, the flames appeared again. Moreover, the aura seemed to be even more shocking than before. Lord Molin, this woman can control the flames on Langkingfeng Peak. I'm afraid she's not simple. Seeing this, the other people from Majin sect also realized that something was wrong, and they all became fearful. They might not know the identity of this woman, but they all knew how terrifying the flames on Langkingfeng Peak were. So many people had already died before, and they did not want to step on this path again. Once they became fearful, their combat power would be greatly reduced. At this moment, the people from Majin sect were like that. In fact, Mo Lin was one of them. Just from the two balls of flames that had suddenly erupted, he could already tell that Chu Luiyue's strength was far beyond the rumors. Plus, she had the help of the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix. They were even less of a match for her. Seal off Langkingfeng Peak. I want to see what she's planning to do. Yes. Hearing this, the others quickly responded. They did not move forward anymore, but chose to stay in their positions and attack together. Numerous forces flew out at the same time. They gathered above Langkingfeng Peak. The rich energy surged violently. Then this energy formed a huge barrier, trying to trap Chu Luiyue within. Chu Luiyue looked over and her red lips curled up slightly. You want to stop me with just this? She straightened her back and held Scarlet Heaven Sword tightly with both hands. Surging origin power gushed out from his dantian and poured into the snow-white blade. She wanted to completely overturn this Peach Blossom Cove and take a look. Previously, she was still hesitating on how to do this without batting an eyelid. Since she had already fallen out with Majin sect, then, she might as well take this opportunity to make her move. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated, then she swung her sword fiercely. However, the sword light did not reach Langkingfeng Peak, but another peak at the side. Digression. There are 2 more updates today and I will finish them before 8 o'clock. You can read them together later. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1882. A rainbow light pierced through the sky. The dazzling and bright sword light slashed down with a domineering aura. Crack. The crisp sound of something breaking was heard. The barrier that the people of Black Sword sect had just set up was shattered. The barrier did not even have the slightest effect on the Scarlet Cloud Sword. It had already turned into countless streams of light and scattered in all directions. Poof. Mo Lin and the rest felt the backlash and their faces turned pale. Immediately after, under their horrified gazes, the sword light accurately landed on another mountain peak. Boom. The sound was earth-shattering. A crack suddenly appeared on the steep and tall mountain peak. In an instant, a gale swept across and countless pinkish-white peach blossoms fell. Then, a faint blue flame surged out from the crack on the mountain peak. This scene caused everyone present to be dumbstruck. Because they were too shocked, everyone fell into a strange deathly silence for a moment. After a while, someone muttered, "What's going on? Why is there a flame coming out from the bottom of the mountain?" The people of Black Sword sect knew that there was a secret hidden under the Azure Peak. Hence, the mountain fire raged on. Otherwise, Mo Yun would not have asked them to keep watch over this place. He would rather pay a huge price than give up on this place. Almost everyone had silently agreed that there was some kind of opportunity hidden in the Azure Peak. But now, why was the mountain beside it also burning? Did this mean that there was something hidden under the mountain peak as well? Mo Lin clenched his teeth in silence. Go back immediately. Report this to the vice sect leader. At this moment, even he could not guarantee what would happen next. However, before they could move, they saw another group of people approaching. It was Nan Yuxing who had followed Chu Luiyue all the way here. The Scarlet Gold Celestial Phoenix was extremely fast. Even though Nan Yuxing had already exerted all his strength, he still could not catch up with it. Moreover, the distance between the two of them had widened again. This was also why he had only rushed over after Chu Luiyue had been here for a while. However, at this moment, Nan Yuxing was also confused by the scene before him. A trace of shock flashed across Nan Yuxing's face when he saw the bursting flames. If I didn't see wrongly, those flames seemed to be caused by Chu Luiyue? She merely raised her hand, and flames began to burn on the mountain peak. This flame is clearly unusual. How did Chu Luiyue do this? Nan Yuxing had just arrived at the Peach Blossom Dock today. Therefore he did not know what had happened to Lan Qingfeng a few days ago. You are... Mo Lin noticed Nan Yuxing and instantly became alert. Venerable God. Nan Yuxing coldly glanced at him. His gaze paused for a moment on the embroidered pattern of two swords circling the moon on their left chest. Someone from the Black Sword sect? Molin felt a little uncomfortable. Judging from this person's tone, he seemed to be high and mighty. It was as if he didn't place the Black Sword sect in his eyes at all. Not bad. This is our territory. May I know who your excellency is and why you're here? Nan Yuxing sneered. Your territory? If this is really your territory, how can you allow that Shangguan Yu to act so presumptuously here? Molin's expression instantly turned ugly. What's more, can't you tell what I'm here for? Nan Yuxing raised his saber and pointed it at Chu Luiyue. I'm here today to kill her. At this moment, Chu Luiyue and Dumpling had already flown from Lan Qingfeng to the second mountain peak. She knew that Nan Yuxing had already caught up with her. She also knew that the people from the Black Sword sect were eyeing her covetously. However, she didn't care. Because she had more important things to do now. She jumped down from Dumpling's body. At this moment they were standing at the crack that had just been split open. Not far in front of them there was a burning flame. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused before she closed her eyes. Dumpling stood guard at the side, vigilantly observing the surroundings. When he heard that Nan Yuxing said that they were here to kill Chu Luiyue, Molin's expression eased a little. Looking at the other party's formation, it didn't seem like they were lying. Molin frowned and thought to himself. Looking at the current situation, even if they joined forces, they might not be able to deal with that woman. However, if they had this person's help, it would undoubtedly make things easier for them. After all, she was a venerable god expert. Her fighting strength couldn't be underestimated. If they could let the snipe and the clam fight, what is she doing? Just as Molin was thinking of how to reap the benefits of the fisherman, a surprised voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He instinctively looked in the direction of the voice and saw Chu Luiyue standing still on the mountain peak with her eyes closed at this moment. She seemed to be waiting for something. Molin frowned even more. At this moment, in this place, what was the meaning of her doing this? Could it be related to the blue flame? He thought about it repeatedly, but to no avail. On the other hand, Nan Yuxing didn't care at all. The flame was indeed strange, but it wasn't enough to make him feel fear. Looking at her, it was obvious that she was brewing something. If he didn't make a move now, when would he? Without hesitation, Nan Yuxing tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and charged towards Chu Luiyue. What, you can't escape anymore? His words were filled with undisguised mockery. From his point of view, Chu Luiyue had racked her brains to come here just to control the flames. If she thought that she could stop him with this, she was too naive. Chu Luiyue's thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, but she still didn't open her eyes. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the flame. There should be. She had clearly sensed that under this mountain peak. Go to hell. Nan Yuxing had already flown in front of Chu Luiyue. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth gathered crazily towards his long saber. In the next moment, he held the saber with both hands and slashed out. Wherever the saber light passed, the void began to collapse rapidly. Violent spatial fluctuations began to spread out with the two of them as the center. At the same time, a dangerous aura surged towards them. The expressions of Mo Lin and the rest changed. Quick retreat. The void began to collapse in all directions. At this moment, Nan Yuxing didn't realize what was happening. In his eyes, there was only Chu Luiyue. His only thought was to kill her on the spot. Dumpling flew up. She flapped her wings. Whoosh. A burning reddish-gold fire suddenly flew out and rapidly formed a gigantic barrier in front of Chu Luiyue. Boom. The two forces collided violently. Nan Yuxing had used all his strength this time. After a short stalemate, cracks began to appear on the barrier. At the same time, countless spatial turbulences began to surge out from the collapsing void, crushing the barrier to pieces. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1883. This scene finally made Nan Yuxing realize that the situation was not right. He quickly turned his eyes and took a closer look. In a short period of time, several black spatial rifts had appeared in all directions. At this moment, these spatial rifts were slowly intertwining and merging with each other, and the tyrannical turbulence that was constantly gushing out also began to fight fiercely. Countless chaotic energies collided with each other, causing the situation to become even worse. No, Nan Yuxing frowned. He had indeed not held back when he attacked just now. However, even if it was an all-out attack from a venerable god expert, it should not have caused such a situation. Moreover, he had just broken through as a venerable god. This situation was indeed a little strange. However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment before it was quickly drowned out by hatred. Right now he only wanted to kill Chu Luiyue and take revenge for Nanyi. As for the rest, it would not be too late to deal with them after all these things were over. Nan Yuxing was a very proud person. The things that had happened during this period of time had caused him a great deal of agitation. Therefore his emotions were still in a very extreme state at this moment. If he could calm down now and take a closer look at the situation around him, he would realize that a terrifying danger was quietly approaching. Unfortunately, at this moment, nothing could enter his eyes and nothing could enter his ears. He did not even take Mo Lin and the other's strange retreat to heart. He only wanted to kill Chu Luiyue. After the barrier that Dumpling had set up shattered, the terrifying blade light went straight for Chu Luiyue's face. The strands of hair on her forehead had been swept up by the wind. Dumpling was on guard, and there seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. Just as she was about to attack again, she heard Chu Luiyue's voice from behind her. "Found it." Dumpling turned around. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. She raised her hand, and a black shield suddenly appeared in front of her. Nan Yuxing's heart skipped a beat. Previously he had seen how powerful Chu Luiyue's shield was. He did not know if his attack after breaking through as a venerable god would be able to break through the black shield. Suddenly his eyes narrowed. He saw that the black shield seemed to be different from before. He took a closer look and realized that a few pieces of rust had been peeled off from the surface of the metal. The shield, which was originally flat, became bumpy in an instant. It looked a little shabby. Nan Yuxing almost laughed out loud. "Shangguan Yu? I haven't seen you for a while, and this treasure of yours has already been broken. Or is it that you don't have any other suitable yuan instruments on you?" Chu Luiyue clenched the black shield in his hand and looked up. Their eyes met. Nan Yuxing could clearly see the cunning glint in that pair of clear black jade-like eyes. This made his heart sink. Chu Luiyue's red lips curved slightly. "To deal with you, this is enough." Just as she finished speaking, a stream of light suddenly flew out from the flames in front of her and headed straight for the shield. Almost at the same time, a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. That stream of light quickly replaced it. Nan Yuxing was standing closest to it, so he did not have time to see what it was. When he finally reacted, he saw that the black shield seemed to be glowing a few times and then quickly dimmed. For some reason he suddenly felt uneasy. Chu Luiyue had already flown up and blocked the attack with the shield in front of her. "Dumpling." Hearing the call, Dumpling obediently flapped its wings and flew behind her. One man and one beast were hiding behind the black shield. Nan Yuxing forced a mocking smile. "It's just a pile of scrap. Rumble." Before he could finish his sentence, the power of the two sides collided violently. An earth-shattering explosion. Nan Yuxing even felt that his ears were ringing. Even his heart became numb. But in the next moment an even more shocking scene happened. After the sword light collided with the black shield, it did not stop at all and disappeared with a loud bang. In an instant, light scattered in all directions. The strong backlash caused Nan Yuxing's chest to shake, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff. His face instantly turned pale. He staggered back half a step. Although it was only half a step, it was a great humiliation to Nan Yuxing. He actually lost? He actually lost to a high god with the power of a god. He looked up in shock and anger and looked at the black shield in Chu Luiyue's hand again. What kind of yuan instrument was this? How could it block his attack so easily? Molin and the others who were watching from afar were also deeply shocked. For a long time they were speechless. Even a high god like Nan Yuxing would end up like this. If it were them, they would probably end up even more miserable. "Lord Molin, just now, something seemed to have flown out from the fire?" After a while someone finally spoke up. His voice was trembling. Molin was suddenly energized. "That's right. Just now, something had indeed flown out from the fire and landed on her shield." "What was that?" Before they could figure it out, Chu Luiyue had already turned around and headed toward the third mountain. Her figure was light and agile, and her red dress fluttered in the wind. From afar, she looked like a ball of crimson flame, joyfully moving through the dense forest. Then she raised her sword again. Molin suddenly realized something and his eyes widened in shock. She's going to split the mountain? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1884. Chu Luiyue swung her sword a second time without any hesitation. The sword chimed and shook the heavens and the earth. The terrifying sword energy tore the sky apart and slashed down. Rumble. Following a loud crash, the mountain next to it was slashed apart once again. The originally steep and precipitous mountain peak was neatly cut open from the top of the mountain, leaving behind a huge crack. Boom. Then, another ball of blue flames burst out from the crack and soared into the sky. Nan Yuxing's pupils shrank. He had a bad feeling. In the distance, Mo Lin and the others were even more shocked. How could this be? How could this be? Wasn't it said that only the bottom of Langkingfeng Peak had amazing opportunities? But now, why were there flames bursting out from the bottom of the surrounding mountains? Chu Luiyue had only swung her sword twice, but she had already split open 2 mountains and ignited 2 balls of flames. Every swing of her sword was accurate. Mo Lin's heart was filled with fear. He had already vaguely realized that Chu Luiyue had indeed come prepared. Or rather, she had done it on purpose. What was she going to do? Split open all the mountains and ignite all the flames below. Mo Lin's mind was in a mess when he thought of the scene where something flew onto her shield from the flames. He stared at the figure and felt that it was familiar. Suddenly he opened his eyes wide. Could it be that she was the one who followed Sanson to Langkingfeng Peak that day? Otherwise, how could she ignite the flames on Langkingfeng Peak so easily? There were even other things below the mountains. It must be her. It must be her. At this moment, Mo Lin finally understood. From the beginning to the end, these flames were closely related to Chu Luiyue. If it's really as I thought, then the thing buried under Lan Qingfeng would have long been taken by Chu Luiyue as her own. Mo Lin broke out in cold sweat when this thought appeared in his mind. You guys stay here and guard. I'll personally invite the vice faction leader. As he spoke, he was about to turn around when he suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air from afar. Everyone looked over and was immediately shocked. Because it was a group of people. To be more precise, it was a chaotic battle between several parties. Mo Yun was also among them. Mo Lin was just about to step forward when he suddenly realized that those people who were fighting were rather unfamiliar, but their strengths were extremely formidable. Third boss is here too. Someone exclaimed. Mo Lin looked over and frowned. Not only was Sanson here, but she was also standing opposite Mo Lin. At this moment she was fighting with full vigor. From the looks of it, they seemed to be stopping Mo Yun's group from coming over. On the other side, there seemed to be an unfamiliar god expert working together with Mo Yun. The scene was extremely chaotic. Molin and the others were completely dumbfounded. What was going on? They had only been guarding this place for 2 days. How could so many things have happened? Whoosh! Rong Xiu waved his sleeves, and a faint golden barrier blocked Mo Yun and the others outside. Sensing the astonishing pressure surging from above, Mo Yun was shocked and angry. This Rong Xiu was too difficult to deal with. And that Sun Yi, his strength was also far beyond their imagination. Mo Yun's gaze turned, looking past Rong Xiu and the others to Lan Qingfeng, who was behind them. His heart sank the moment he saw what was in front of him. The fire on Lan Qingfeng had indeed started burning. The key point was that other than Lan Qingfeng, there were also blue flames burning crazily on the 2 mountains beside it. From the looks of it, it was obvious that someone had forcefully split open the mountain rocks and drawn it out from below. Mo Yun's gaze finally landed on the slender figure standing on the mountain peak. She stood against the wind, holding a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right hand. Her eyes were tightly shut and no one knew what she was doing. In front of her, a deep ravine extended, and the blazing flames were jumping around like fairies. At this moment, countless thoughts flashed through Mo Yun's mind. However, before he could think clearly, he saw something suddenly flying out from the flames, heading straight for Chu Luiyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes and raised the black shield in her hand. Buzz! That ray of light landed on the shield, and there was a ripple of light. However, in just an instant, that ray of light quickly disappeared. It was as if it had been swallowed by the black shield, but it was as if nothing had happened. How could it be that nothing had happened? Mo Yun's heart felt as if it was being squeezed by something. He was extremely smart. Based on what he had seen so far, it was enough to explain a lot of things. That day, the enchantment on Lan Qingfeng suddenly dissipated, and the flames gradually extinguished. It must be because of her. Then the thing below, probably, however, according to the information that he had gathered, it was clearly only the situation below Lan Qingfeng. Now, even the surrounding mountains were, a huge amount of information rushed in, causing Mo Yun's mind to go blank. At this moment, Chu Luiyue looked down at the shield in her hand. As expected, after the rust peeled off, it became heavier. The two hidden powers that were summoned by splitting open the two mountains had all merged into the black shield. The originally flat shield became more and more uneven. Complicated and mysterious patterns could be vaguely seen in the shallow depression. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and looked up. If she wanted the rust on the black shield to be completely peeled off, it would be an extremely torturous and long process. As the secret text on it gradually appeared, its weight and pressure continued to increase. She could still carry it now, but if this continued, she was not sure how long she could hold on. She pursed her lips and continued to head to the next mountain. Seeing Chu Luiyue running to the next mountain, Mo Yun's heart suddenly surged with a strong sense of uneasiness. He could almost predict what Chu Luiyue was going to do. The anger in his heart was surging, and it was about to rush out of his chest. Force surged in Mo Yun's palm, and then he quickly slammed his palm forward. Lingyun palm. A huge greenish-black palm print condensed in the void. Then it began to quickly head toward the enchantment set up by Rongxiu. The power of both sides began to silently kill, entangle, and devour. Ripples appeared on the surface of the barrier, but it did not shatter. It was extremely flexible. On the contrary, it was that palm print of Mo Yun that started to gradually weaken in the midst of the frenzied battle. Mo Yun was burning with anxiety as he watched. He was indeed not confident that he could win against Rongxiu in a head-on battle. But time was of the essence. If he continued to let Chu Luiyue go on like this, the consequences would be unimaginable. Rongxiu, do you know what she's doing? If the entire peach blossom dock is destroyed, Mo Yun shouted at the top of his lungs, and his face was ashen. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. As long as she wants to, let her be. It's just a peach blossom dock. If it's destroyed, I will take responsibility. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1885. His handsome face was calm and composed, as if he didn't take this matter to heart at all. Her eyes were filled with elegance, and one could see that she was indulging and doting on that person. It was as though even if she turned everything upside down, he would still spoil her. Mo Yun was so angry that he could not speak, his body trembling. These two people were too presumptuous. Rongxiu, don't blame me for not reminding you. This is Peach Blossom Dock. If she did anything out of line, the entire Peach Blossom Dock would be buried with her. The surrounding void had already started to collapse uncontrollably. It was not that Mo Yun had not seen such a situation before, but he had never experienced such a serious situation before. Rongxiu's brows raised slightly. I really can't tell that Vice Sect leader Mo actually has such a heart. In these 2 years, the number of people who died under your Ink Sword sect is not small, right? If Vice Sect leader Mo really cares about the world and cares about everyone, why not harm fewer people? I think it will be more effective this way. Mo Yun was speechless by Rongxiu's words. Of course, he did not care about the life and death of the people in Peach Blossom Dock. He was only worried that Chu Luiyue would monopolize the things that they had been searching for so long. But of course, such a reason could not be said. Mo Yun could only be anxious. At the side, Luo Yan's expression was solemn as his mind raced. There was obviously another reason why Mo Yun was so worried. Could it be the flames on the mountain? He looked forward, and through the enchantment he could only see Nanyu Xing's slightly hunched back. It seemed that he was injured. Luo Yan could not help but frown. Nanyu Xing was already a god expert. How could he not be able to defeat Chu Luiyue, who was a high god? Could it be that in this short period of time Chu Luiyue's strength had increased again? Just as both sides were in a deadlock, another group of people rushed over from behind. This aura was somewhat familiar. Luo Yan's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly turned back to look, and was immediately delighted. The few people who had chased over were the Nan family who came with them. Behind them there were also some people from the Black Sword sect. However, Luo Yan soon discovered that the number of people was wrong. Originally there were 8 elders present. However, only 4 of them had come. Luo Yan's heart was filled with a strong sense of unease. He immediately stepped forward. Only when he got closer did he see that the bodies of these people were stained with messy bloodstains. It seemed like they had gone through a fierce battle. Why are there only 4 of you? Where are the rest? Luo Yan asked anxiously. The elders looked at each other with dejected expressions. Those people are all? Luo Yan's heart turned cold. The 4 who were still alive were all eminent gods. Even they were unable to save him. He couldn't help but say, how could this be? Judging from their strength, they are definitely not your match. The them he was referring to was naturally Sanson and the others. Previously, when he and Mo Yun chased after them, Rong Xiao and Sun Yi quickly caught up. As for the rest, they only came after a period of time. At that time, he thought that they had used some method to temporarily stop the people from the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. Who would have thought that it would take so many people's lives? One of the elders spoke with difficulty. Luo Yan, you don't know. The people from the Yu family have extremely powerful formations. If they were to fight individually, the people from the Yu family were indeed no match for several eminent gods. However, who knew that this group of people had already thought of a strategy from the beginning? When Rong Xiao and the others left, they didn't say anything and immediately set up a profound formation. That formation was very strange. They worked together with the people from the Black Sword sect to break it with great difficulty. However, they also paid a great price. The same went for the Black Sword sect. In fact, because they didn't have many eminent gods, their casualties were even more serious. In short, to them it was indeed a bloody battle. However, the most hateful thing was that they were trapped in that formation. Sanson and the others who set up the formation only handed it over to the servants of the Yu family and then left directly. This was also why Sanson and the others had rushed over so much earlier than them. In other words, Sanson and the others had killed half of them without any effort. After Luo Yan heard this, he was shocked and angry. At the same time, there was a trace of uncontrollable deep fear. He couldn't help but turn back. At this moment, Sanson and the others were standing beside Sun Yi, looking obedient. Seeing the people who chased after them, Sanson couldn't help but click her tongue. Eminent gods are indeed different. They actually caught up so quickly? This sentence almost angered Luo Yan and the others half to death. Fast? How was it fast? Under the circumstances where so many people had died, they barely managed to rush out of the formation and catch up here. It could be said that it wasn't painful. Sanson's words were no different from sprinkling salt on their wounds. Luo Yan's chest rose and fell violently. However, at the same time, countless thoughts were surging in his heart. Looking at these people, they didn't even put them eminent gods in their eyes. Luo Yan wanted to curse, but the thick smell of blood around the people around him made it hard for him to breathe. Didn't they say that these people came from outside the Divine Ruins world? How could they be so powerful? Luo Yan couldn't figure it out. There was no need to talk about Rong Xiao. After all, he was an eminent god and was born as the holy son of the Yuntian Tower. His bloodline talent was already famous for being powerful. But, what about Chu Luiyue? Wasn't she just an eminent god? And these followers of hers? They actually possessed strength that far exceeded their own cultivation realm. Why were the people related to her so abnormal? On the other side, Mo Yin didn't care so much. Seeing that the people from Black Sword sect had caught up, he ordered without hesitation, "Everyone from Black Sword sect, listen up. Set up the formation." Yes. With Mo Yun's order, no one dared to disobey and immediately took action. There were about a dozen people from Black Sword sect chasing after them, but in Mo Yun's eyes, it was still not enough. Chu Luiyue could directly split the mountain and draw out the blue flames from the bottom of the mountain. This proved that her strength was definitely more shocking than the rumors. Mo Lin. Mo Yun looked up and shouted sternly. Mo Lin's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly replied, "Yes." Without Mo Yun's instructions, he knew what to do. Everyone follow. Mo Lin raised his hand and immediately led the people behind him to charge towards Mo Yun and the others. Rong Xiao's barrier blocked them. Looking at the barrier that was suffused with a faint golden color, a trace of hesitation flashed across Mo Lin's face, but it disappeared in an instant. In the next moment he directly drew his sword and drew a line on his palm. Blood splattered. Following that, a surge of force mixed with blood crazily surged out. Blood sacrifice array. Almost at the same time the people behind him did the same. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1886. The thick stench of blood spread through the air. Several forces converged. Then the sky suddenly darkened. Countless dark clouds converged from all directions. The sky, which was originally considered clear, suddenly turned gloomy. Strong winds blew, howling incessantly. Rumble. A huge sound exploded from behind the layers of clouds. Tianlei, like a silver snake, was faintly discernible as it slithered quickly. Rong Xiao raised his head to take a look, his phoenix eyes narrowing slightly. To be able to trigger Tianlei in such a short time, one could see how powerful it was. 13 suddenly thought of something. his eyes widening as he turned to look at Sun-yi. Big brother, wasn't this aura almost exactly the same as the one he felt on the day of the soul-gazing tribulation? Although he was busy breaking through back then, he still paid attention to the situation around him. On that day, aside from the numerous bolts of lightning that he had attracted, the people from the Black Sword sect had also attracted many bolts of lightning, causing a huge commotion. He vaguely felt that the Tianlei summoned by the two sides was somewhat different, but he didn't have time to distinguish what exactly was different. But now that he saw this scene again, he immediately recognized it. This was exactly the same as that day. A cold glint flashed across Sun-yi's indifferent and narrow eyes. He was also present that day, and as a bystander he saw it even more clearly. He glanced at 13 and shook his head lightly, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Ink Sword sect wanted to trigger Tianlei to attack Master. This killing intent was too strong, to the point that they didn't even bother to conceal it and directly attacked. At this moment, Mo Yun indeed couldn't care less. In the past 2 years, the Black Sword sect had held a test every month. Every time, they would specially choose a secluded place and ensure that no one was watching before they began. Now, in broad daylight, directly activating the blood sacrifice formation in front of so many pairs of eyes would definitely attract a lot of attention. But there was no other way. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was still planning to continue splitting the mountain, Mo Yun didn't dare to guarantee how the situation would develop if he allowed her to continue like this. So now he could only gamble. As long as Chu Luiyue was dealt with, the rest could be dealt with slowly. Thinking of this, Mo Yun did not hesitate to cut open his left palm. Blood flew out. A terrifying force surged out from his body. The people from the Ink Sword sect following behind him naturally attacked as well. On both sides of the golden barrier, countless blood-colored lights converged and intersected to form strange patterns. It was the image of the Black Sword sect's twin swords circling the moon. From afar, it looked like Rong Xiu's barrier had split the gigantic blood-colored pattern into two from the middle. The pincer attack from both sides caused the barrier to shake even more violently. Rumble. Finally, the first Tianlei came crashing down. Almost at the same time, the violently vibrating golden barrier suddenly shattered. Bang. For a moment, light scattered in all directions. Violent energy surged out in all directions. The blood-red patterns on both sides began to converge towards the center. At this moment, Chu Luiyue, who had just arrived at another mountain peak, also noticed the commotion. She raised her head and frowned slightly. A trace of impatience flashed across her eyes. There's really no end to this. Did the people from the Ink Sword sect finally react and intend to shed all pretense of cordiality with her? Sheng Wanyu. Now everyone wants your life. I'd like to see how long you can be so arrogant. Nanyu Xing raised his head and looked. When he realized that the reason why the Ink Sword sect had set up such a huge formation was to kill Chu Luiyue, he could not help but feel relieved. Chu Luiyue glanced at him. A loser like you still has the mood to be so arrogant? If I were you, I'd probably die of shame after losing to a cultivator who's one level lower than me. Nanyu Xing's face immediately turned red. Also, your Yuan meridian was severed previously. Logically speaking, it should be impossible for you to fully recover. But not only did you fully recover in such a short period of time, you even broke through to become a god. Nanyu Xing, have you never thought about how strange this situation is? Chu Liyue's question sounded like a joke to Nanyu Xing. I was able to recover because I'm lucky. And I have the help of an expert. Of course, a lowly person like you has no right to meet such an expert. You've never even heard of such an expert. Chu Luiyue curled the corner of her mouth. She did not take his derogatory words to heart. Indeed, I've never seen such an expert. But, as a celestial physician, I've heard of a method that can quickly turn a crippled person into a genius. Are you interested in hearing it? Originally, Nanyu Xing did not want to waste his breath on Chu Luiyue. However, the mysterious smile on her face made his heart tremble for some reason. Who wants to listen to your nonsense? He reprimanded coldly. Chu Luiyue was not bothered by his attitude. She raised her eyebrows and suddenly said, Nanyu Xing, I won't hide it from you. From the moment we exchanged blows, I felt that the aura on your body was very familiar. Nanyu Xing sneered. You and I have already met in the Divine Ruins world. Isn't it normal for you to feel familiar with my aura? Chu Luiyue smiled. Of course, I'm not talking about your aura when I say familiar. Nanyu Xing's heart skipped a beat. Chu Luiyue continued to ask, Nanyu Xing, don't you feel it at all? Your Yuan meridian is obviously very different from the Yuan meridian you used to have. I don't believe that you can't even notice this. Nan Yuxing's legs suddenly went soft. He took a step back uncontrollably. His face turned deathly pale. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Don't try to mislead me with your lies. Shengguanyu. Am I trying to mislead you with my lies, or are you unwilling to face reality? I'm afraid no one knows better than you, right? Chu Luiyue interrupted him. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly pierced into his heart. If I remember correctly, although Nanny's tongue was cut off, the Yuan meridian in her body is still intact. If you take it out and put it into another person's body, it won't be a waste. With every word Chu Luiyue said, Nan Yuxing's face turned paler. His lips trembled as he muttered to deny it. But in his heart, countless guesses surged uncontrollably. It wasn't that he didn't think about how he recovered his Yuan meridian. But his father only said that he asked an expert for help, so he firmly believed it. In fact, did he really not have any doubts in his heart? Of course he did. But that guess was too terrifying. He didn't dare to think that way at all. He only talked about how he wanted to take revenge for Nanny, as if this was the only way to calm his restless heart a little. At this moment, Chu Luiyue's words finally unveiled the last layer of veil. Nan Yuxing, is your younger sister's Yuan meridian convenient for you? Translator. Noodletown Translations Editor. Noodletown Translations. Chapter 1887. Chu Luiyue's casual words were like a poisoned arrow that pierced into Nan Yuxing's heart. He staggered a few steps back and almost lost his balance. You're spouting nonsense. He reflexively shouted in a stern voice. What do you know? You don't know anything. What right do you have to spout nonsense? Because of his agitation, his voice was exceptionally hoarse and sharp. He stared at Chu Luiyue with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. There seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. It looked like he couldn't wait to kill Chu Luiyue on the spot and chew on his flesh and bones. Chu Luiyue raised the corner of his lips. However, there wasn't a hint of a smile on his face. There was only coldness in his eyes. I'm just asking you a question. I didn't say anything. If it's fake, why are you so agitated? Nan Yuxing, who killed your biological sister, Nanny? Why don't you ask yourself or ask your good father? Nan Yuxing was about to break down. He wanted to ignore Chu Luiyue's words. However, those words seemed to have gone crazy and kept reverberating in his mind. Countless questions surged in his mind at this moment. It wasn't that he didn't have doubts. However, how could he dare to ask? He didn't even dare to think about how he had recovered his Yuan meridian. Boom. Just as Nan Yuxing was in a daze, a blue flame suddenly transformed into a long whip under his body. It rushed up and tightly bound him. Nan Yuxing was shocked and subconsciously tried to break free. However, the flame suddenly exploded before he could break free. Boom. Boom. Instantly, countless sparks flew in all directions. Terrifying and scorching energy continuously bombarded Nan Yuxing's body. His figure was instantly surrounded by the exploding flames. First young master. Luo Yan and the others were shocked when they saw this scene. As they were still some distance away, they couldn't hear what Chu Luiyue and Nan Yuxing said. In their opinion, the two of them had only said a few words before Chu Luiyue attacked. This was considered a sneak attack. However, Nan Yuxing was a god. Logically speaking, he should have been able to dodge it. What happened to him just now? Quick. Save first young master. At the same time, he moved and rushed in Nan Yuxing's direction. The four elders behind him quickly followed behind him. However, before they could arrive, a bolt of lightning flashed in the sky and struck down. Its target was Chu Luiyue. Under the influence of Tianlei's power, Luo Yan and the others. When he saw the Tianlei's landing spot, he had a look of Nan Yuxing was just a short distance away from Chu Luiyue, so he would definitely suffer a huge impact if the lightning struck him. He suddenly turned his head and shouted at Mo Yun. Assistant Sect Leader Mo. My Nan family's young master is still there. How can you act so rashly? If such a bolt of heavenly thunder was added to the mix, the consequences would be unthinkable. When Mo Yun heard that, he frowned coldly. We want to kill Shangguanyu. He insisted on going there. Who can he blame? Since he knew that he didn't have the ability, he should have left. Nan Yuxing had been chasing after Chu Luiyue for so long. Not only did he fail to stop her, he even allowed her to split the mountains. Mo Yun was very unhappy about this. He really looked down on this so-called young master of the Nan family. She looks like a god, but her actual combat strength can't even compare to Chu Luiyue, who is a high god. If he stayed there, he would only be a hindrance to everyone. Mo Yun was also in an extremely sensitive state. Naturally, he was not polite with his words. In fact, even if Nan Yuxing died because of this, he wouldn't care at all. When he said this, the faces of the elders of the Nan family all changed. Everyone agreed to form an alliance. How could you say something like this? What's the point of forming an alliance? Nan Yuxing was the first young master of the Nan family and the only successor of Nan Yifan. Previously, he was seriously injured and was almost crippled. Nan Yifan had spent a lot of effort to help him recover and break through to the God realm. If he died here today, Luo Yan and the rest wouldn't be able to explain themselves. Mo Yun, don't go overboard. We also want to kill Shang Guanyu. But if you continue to act like this, don't blame us for being impolite. Luo Yan also didn't want to fight with Mo Yun at this time. But the other party was really too much. Facing Luo Yan's threat, Mo Yun responded with a cold smile. He didn't even look over. In fact, when he was about to use the blood sacrifice array, he had already decided to bury everyone here together with him. What was a mere Nan Yuxing to him? This battle was very laughable in the eyes of Sanson and the rest. Today has really broadened my horizons. A second ago they said that they wanted to work together. The next moment they turned against each other and became enemies. How exciting. Wu Yao sighed from the bottom of his heart. Before they could make a move, Ma Jian sect and Nan family had already stood up. It was simply laughable. Sanson waved her hand disapprovingly. It's normal operation. Don't worry about it. These two families didn't have any good intentions. It was expected that things would turn out like this. Big brother, should we make a move? He looked at Sini. Sini pondered for a moment and looked at Rongxiu. Does Her Highness think? Rongxiu looked up and glanced at Chu Liwei. His thin lips curved slightly. No hurry. She hasn't played enough. Let's wait a little longer and let her play to her heart's content. It won't be too late to make a move then. Digression. I'm going out today and I'm not sure when I'll be back. So, I'll make up for it tomorrow. Speaking of which, I swore that I wouldn't write on New Year's Eve, but it seems like I won't be able to do it. The list of activities will be posted in the comment section tonight. The prizes will be distributed after the new year. I'll wear a mask when I go out. Everyone please be careful and have a safe and healthy new year. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1888. Tani nodded. When the rest of the people heard this, they looked at each other and couldn't help but look at their own master. At this moment, she had already raised her sword again. Boom. Another dark blue flame gushed out from under the cracked mountain rocks. More and more flames appeared. Under the gloomy sky, they looked like balls of ghostly fire burning faintly, dyeing the dark and thick clouds with a faint blue color. The slender figure was extremely agile, shuttling through the undulating mountain range like a fairy. The flames seemed to be extremely obedient to her will as they danced. Master is really amazing. Yujio couldn't help but praise. Who knows how many people Ma Jian sect has sacrificed just for that azure peak. However, in front of Master he didn't even put them in his eyes. From what I see, Master is really going to flip the entire Peach Blossom dock over. Master is naturally extraordinary when he makes a move. Wu Yao rubbed his chin and looked at the Tianlei that was still gathering in the sky. At first he was still a little worried, but seeing that his big brother and the others didn't seem to care, his heart was basically settled. Shifang looked at them and then at the collapsing void. He rubbed his hands and muttered in a low voice. It's said that the void in Peach Blossom Dock is chaotic. It seems like it's true. It was just a fierce battle, but it had already caused the spatial energy here to become chaotic. Countless turbulent flows flowed out recklessly. If the situation continued to worsen, it wouldn't be good. From the corner of his eye, Shifang saw that 13's expression was very calm. He couldn't help but nudge him with his elbow and whisper. 13, aren't you worried? Worried about what? 13 looked at him in surprise. Shifang pursed his lips. This void. I'm afraid it's going to completely shatter. I know. 13 nodded calmly. Although his realm wasn't as high as his big brother and the others, he had followed them for many years and seen and heard a lot. Naturally, his vision was different. He also knew what this meant. But, isn't Master and big brother here? 13 rolled his eyes and coughed. His Highness is also quite powerful. With so many people around, he felt that there was nothing to worry about. If you really don't have the confidence, why are you still staying here? According to Master's temperament, she wouldn't stay in an unsafe place for long. Shifang was taken aback. Then he thought about it carefully and felt that it made sense. That's true. No matter what, his master had been through hundreds of battles. It was impossible for him to not know the seriousness of the situation. In this situation, she still chose to stay here. This only proved that there was something more important to her here. Rumble. Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. He viciously hacked at Chu Luiyue. Almost at the same time, Chu Luiyue jumped onto Dumpling's back. Whoosh! Dumpling spread its wings and flew quickly to the next mountain peak. Huge flames burst out from the mountaintop behind them. From afar, it was as if a phoenix had been reborn from blood. Damn it! Mo Yun was furious. They had already used the blood sacrifice array without caring about anything, but they still couldn't do anything to Chu Luiyue. That crimson gold heavenly phoenix's speed was too fast. Continue. Mo Yun ordered. His voice was hoarse and almost hysterical. Chu Luiyue had escaped from his hands time and time again, which had already made him extremely angry. He quickly circulated the force in his body and activated the blood sacrifice array. That huge blood-colored totem was like a sea of blood that stretched across the sky. The thick smell of blood quickly spread between heaven and earth. It was almost suffocating. The surging killing intent wantonly surged. Rumble. Low and heavy thunder rolled down from the clouds. It heavily smashed into everyone's ears. It shook everyone's heart. Several silver snake-like tianlei quickly gathered in the sky and immediately fell one after another. Rumble. A loud sound reverberated throughout the area. The wind was raging. The space was distorted even more. Chu Luiyue quickly turned around to take a look. The pitch-black ink-like pressure reflected the dazzling fire. She gently patted Dumpling's head. Tuanzi got the hint and stopped quickly. At this moment they had stopped at the top of a mountain. Those tianlei arrived in an instant. The distance between the two sides was rapidly shortened. Chu Luiyue raised her head slightly and moved her wrists. However, her feet didn't move. She only looked up at the tianlei. Her black hair was already swept up by the wind, dancing in the air. Seeing this scene, almost everyone was shocked. Mo Yun frowned and couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "Is she crazy?" At this time it was too late to escape, but she actually stopped just like that? Was she scared silly, or did she know that she couldn't escape so she simply gave up? But no matter what the situation was, this action was no different from courting death. Mo Yun was stunned at first, then he sneered. "Looks like she's really tired of living." Previously he had thought that Chu Luiyue would more or less try to avoid it. With the strength she had displayed previously, coupled with the help of Rongxiu and the others, she might be able to hold on for a while. But now that she didn't want to live anymore, she couldn't blame others. Thinking of this, Mo Yun glanced at Rongxiu and the others. A trace of suspicion flashed in his cold eyes. Chu Luiyue was Rongxiu's princess consort, and it was rumored that he doted on this princess consort a lot. In order to marry her smoothly, he didn't even hesitate to offend the Yuntian Tower's patriarch and the other respected elders. Logically speaking, he should be very worried when he saw Chu Luiyue in danger. But at this moment he didn't seem to be worried. And Sin Yi and the others beside him, she actually followed him and stood there without doing anything, not moving at all? Could it be that they had all become idiots as well? But such doubts and confusion only flashed through Mo Yun's mind. The deafening sound of the heavenly lightning striking down quickly snatched away his attention. He turned his head and focused his attention on Chu Luiyue again. An incomparably bright and imposing tianlei fell with a loud bang. It accurately landed on the mountain where Chu Luiyue was. Crack. A huge crack appeared on the mountain. More than half of the mountain peak shook violently. At the same time, another cluster of blue flames quickly surged out from within. Lightning and fire merged and the power of both sides fought fiercely. The figure that always stood as straight as a pine tree was also swallowed at this moment. The corners of Mo Yun's mouth lifted into a cold smile. The tianlei triggered by the blood sacrifice array was extremely powerful. Even a venerable god expert had to be careful when dealing with it, let alone a venerable god like Chu Luiyue. This time she was definitely going to die. However, in the next moment, a figure suddenly rushed out from the flames. It went straight to the sky. Mo Yun's smile finally froze on his face. Digression, insomnia. Increasing the dosage of melatonin didn't have any effect. He barely fell asleep at around 4 in the morning and woke up at 7 in the morning. At this moment he couldn't open his eyes and his mind was in a mess. I can't update on time today. I will try my best to finish the 6 chapters before 8 in the evening. Everyone read it together later. Most importantly, I wish everyone a happy New Year's Eve. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1889. That dark blue fire surrounded Chu Liyue's body. Not only did it not cause her any harm, but it even blocked most of the lightning's strength for her. She rushed out of the place where the flames intertwined without any harm. Then she quickly flew forward with Dumpling. Her speed was extremely fast. The violent energy surging around her couldn't even slow her down in the slightest. Mo Yun's expression was dull, as if he had been slapped a few times. His face was burning with pain. The flames on the mountain peak were so bright that it hurt their eyes and they could not look at it directly. Plus, Mo Yun was in a state of extreme shock, so he did not see that the black shield in Chu Liyue's hand flashed past. At this moment his mind was completely blank. It was fine that the Tianlei did not hit Chu Liyue at the beginning. But that strike just now had truly struck her from the top of her head. Why was Chu Liyue still safe and sound? It was the flame, it was the flame. A white light suddenly flashed across Mo Yun's mind. He suddenly realized. Chu Liyue had indeed controlled the strange blue flames at the foot of the mountain. The thing buried below was definitely already in her hands. Mo Yun was extremely angry and resentful. They had stayed here for almost 2 years and finally confirmed that there was something hidden under Lan Qingfeng. In the end, before they could do anything, Chu Liyue beat them to it. More importantly, when she made her move, they knew that not only Lan Qingfeng, but the surrounding mountains were also inextricably linked to that thing. After suffering for so long, they did not know how many casualties they had paid. In the end, Chu Liyue, who had just arrived at Peach Blossom Cove, beat them to it. How could Mo Yun take this lying down? He suddenly bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood sacrifice array in the sky suddenly surged violently again. A thick black mist was faintly discernible within. But it only appeared for a moment and disappeared in a flash. Rong Xiu seemed to have sensed something and looked up. The black fog had quietly disappeared and could not be seen. But that trace of cold aura still made Rong Xiu squint his eyes slightly. This aura was really familiar. He retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Yun again, deep in thought. Until now, Mo Yun had not really used the power of his bloodline. He would rather cause great damage to himself and sacrifice the blood in his heart, but the bloodline totem did not appear between his eyebrows. Interesting. The sect leader of Black Sword Sect is also surnamed Mo? Rong Xiu suddenly asked. His voice was always cold and low, with a trace of nobility that could not be disobeyed. When it fell into one's ears, one would almost automatically give an answer without warning. How did you? Mo Yun subconsciously spat out these 2 words and then suddenly became alert. Rome was tricking him. He immediately kept quiet and swallowed the rest of his words. But in Rong Xiu's eyes, this was already a tacit agreement. As expected, Rong Xiu's thin lips slightly raised, but the corners of his eyes and brows were slightly cold. Previously, he felt that there was something wrong with Black Sword Sect, as if it had something to do with that side. Taking advantage of the chaos, he immediately got the answer. Looking at Rong Xiu's expression, Mo Yun secretly gritted his teeth. This man was extremely cunning and had many tricks up his sleeve. If he really guessed something, it was within his expectations. But, for some reason, Rong Xiu did not do anything other than symbolically blocking them. He did not seem to be worried about Chu Liyue's safety at all, and only watched calmly. Was he too confident in Chu Liyue, or did he have other preparations? Mo Yun could not figure it out. Rong Xiu was after all famous and was definitely not easy to deal with. But now, the one that needed to be killed the most was Chu Liyue. He could not let her continue to act presumptuously here. Thinking of this, Mo Yun forced himself to calm down, and poured all his power into the blood sacrifice formation. Rumble. The heavenly lightning, which was even more magnificent and powerful than before, rolled down. Almost half of the sky was already illuminated by this dazzling light. And those Tianlei's target was Chu Liyue. This Black Sword Sect does have some ability. On top of a steep mountain, Chu Liyue stood halfway up the mountain, narrowing her eyes slightly and looked at the sky not far away. This formation was much larger than the one they accidentally encountered on the day of 13th's breakthrough. Even if several venerable gods joined forces, they might not be able to achieve this, not to mention that there were only a few venerable gods in Black Sword Sect. Including Mo Yun, the number of venerable gods in Black Sword Sect was less than that of the Nan family. But Chu Liyue was certain that even if those venerable gods of the Nan family worked together, they would not be able to trigger Tianlei of this scale. At the end of the day, the problem lay in the so-called blood sacrifice formation, and the group of people from Black Sword Sect themselves. Moreover, other than being able to trigger Tianlei, they could also control where the Tianlei would fall. She had purposely run left and right a few times just to test the waters. In the end, the Tianlei could indeed follow her and fall. This kind of ability was not something that everyone could have. That was why Chu Luiyue muttered such a sentence. However, after realizing this, she didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Instead, her starry eyes sparkled with excitement. If that's really the case, that's great. Dumpling glanced sideways at her. Sensing her restless emotions, Dumpling became excited as well. She flapped her wings and reddish-gold flames burned fiercely around her. If Mo Yun and the others saw Chu Liyue's expression and knew what she was thinking, they would think that she had gone crazy. They had never seen anyone so happy when there was no one chasing after them. They were clearly in a life-and-death situation, but she did not seem to care. In fact, she was happy and excited. If this was not a problem, then what was? Chu Liyue looked at the approaching Tianlei and slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven. The next moment, the corners of her lips lifted slightly. Dumpling. Let's go. Before she finished speaking, Dumpling had already flapped her wings and rose into the air. She headed straight for the depths of the forest. Trying to escape? It's not that easy. Mo Yun gritted his teeth. Every word seemed to have been squeezed out from between his teeth. She did not want to escape before, but now she wanted to leave. It was too late. Then, under the gaze of several pairs of eyes, the Tianlei fell one after another, almost nailing Chu Liyue to death in this mountain range. The terrifying energy formed invisible waves that spread out in all directions. In an instant, the trees collapsed and countless pink and white peach blossoms and emerald green leaves fluttered in the air. The figure wrapped in reddish-gold flames quickly shuttled through. She left all the Tianlei behind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1890. Boom, boom, boom. Several mountains were hit hard. The mountains shook and huge rocks rolled down. Huge fissures crisscrossed across the mountain range. Following that, clusters of flames spewed out from the cracks. The temperature between heaven and earth instantly rose. Soon, numerous streams of light flew out from the burning flames. They mixed with the countless Tianlei flames and headed straight for Chu Liyue. Bang, bang, bang. The black shield blocked in front of her, blocking all the violent energy. At the same time, more and more rust began to peel off. Streaks of light quickly disappeared. The secret text on the shield also began to reveal its original appearance. The terrifying energy quickly numbed Chu Liyue's arm. The black shield became heavier and heavier, causing her burden to become heavier and heavier. Luckily, Dumpling was there, so her speed did not decrease too much. One person and one beast jumped around in the forest just like that. In just a short while, the entire mountain range had been bombarded by the heavenly lightning and was in shambles. It was a mess as far as the eye could see. Countless blue flames burned on top of the mountain, almost lighting up half of the sky. Scorching hot air rushed towards them. Even though they were still some distance away from the flames, they could still feel the heat on their faces. With a faint burning pain. When Luo Yan saw this scene, he was both shocked and angry, and his heart almost went cold. Nan Yuxing was still trapped in the flames and had not come out yet. He did not know what the situation was like. He made up his mind and was about to move forward. The elders behind him immediately stopped him. Luo Yan, what are you doing? Luo Yan frowned. Eldest young master is still trapped there. If we don't move now, eldest young master will most likely die. The elders looked at each other. Actually, how could they not know this? But, the situation now is too dangerous. If you go rashly, not only will you not be able to help, you will also lose your life. I think we should think of another way. Another way? Now, can you think of any other useful methods? Luo Yan asked. The elder who was trying to dissuade him suddenly stopped talking. The remaining elders also had troubled looks on their faces. Luo Yan glanced at them indifferently. You guys wait here, I'll go personally. Nan Yuxing was the only successor of the patriarch. Before they left, the patriarch had repeatedly warned them to protect him. Now that Nan Yuxing was in trouble and was facing a life-and-death crisis, how could Luo Yan sit by and do nothing? Even if he knew that the road ahead was dangerous, he still had to go. We're going too. The other elder hesitated for a moment before responding immediately. At this time, there was really no need to hesitate on this matter. Even if they knew that there was danger ahead and that their efforts were likely to be in vain, they could not slack off on what they should do. Otherwise, if something really happened to Nan Yuxing, the situation they would face when they returned might not be any better. Yes. Let's go together. This way, our chances of winning will definitely be greater. The rest of the people nodded in agreement. Luo Yin glanced at them and nodded. Then he turned around and rushed towards the direction where Nan Yuxing was trapped. The elders looked at each other with complicated expressions. But in the end, they didn't say much and chose to follow. At this time, the area where the mountain fire was burning had greatly expanded. The closer they got, the more they could feel the terrifying burning pain and heat. The clusters of blue flames seemed to want to burn the entire heaven and earth into ashes as they jumped wildly. Even though Luo Yin was already a god-level expert, he still felt extremely threatened at this time. Ordinary barriers couldn't stop this heat wave at all. Even the surrounding void started to collapse, and the violent spatial turbulence wreaked havoc everywhere. It was almost impossible to maintain the barrier around them for a long time. In a short while, Luo Yin chose to give up on the barrier and rushed forward at full speed. He couldn't help but look in the direction of Chu Luiyue. That woman was standing on the back of the crimson gold celestial phoenix. Her dress was fluttering and her eyes were bright. There was not the slightest bit of fear on her face. There was only endless battle intent. When he met that determined and persistent gaze, Luo Yan's heart felt as if it had been smashed by something. This woman was really not afraid. Even though the mountain fire was raging and Tianlei was bursting, she stood alone without any fear. How could an ordinary person have such courage and fighting spirit? Other than that, Luo Yan had another question in his heart. He was only at the edge now, but he already felt as if he was being roasted by fire. It was very uncomfortable. And Chu Luiyue was in the center of the countless flames. How did she endure it? This thought only flashed through Luo Yan's mind for a moment before it was quickly suppressed. Because he didn't have much time and energy to care about these things now. Right now, he only wanted to save Nan Yuxing as soon as possible. When he was close enough, Luo Yan finally heard a weak cry for help. His heart skipped a beat. This voice belonged to Nan Yuxing. Yuxing? Yuxing? Luo Yan hurried in the direction of the voice. He had a high status in the Nan family, and he would call Nan Yuxing and Nan Yi by their names in private. Although he doted on Nan Yi the most, he also took care of Nan Yuxing. Now that Nan Yi was gone, he was naturally more concerned about Nan Yuxing. If something really happened to Nan Yuxing, Luo Yan took a deep breath. A long crack appeared on the mountain under their feet. The flames were burning fiercely. Vaguely, a figure could be seen struggling in it. Luo Yan's heart was in his mouth. Yuxing. He originally wanted to rush over directly, but the flames were burning too fiercely and he couldn't get close at all. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Yan's force turned into a whip and flew out fiercely. Slap. The sound of the whip breaking through the air was extremely loud. In the next moment, the long whip flew into the flames and tightly wrapped around Nan Yuxing's waist. Luo Yan pulled hard. A figure wrapped in flames instantly flew out. At this moment, Nan Yuxing was covered in burns and his injuries were extremely serious. He curled up on the ground and trembled violently. Low whimpers and moans came from his throat. It seemed like he didn't have any strength to fight anymore. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot. With such injuries, even if he could barely survive in the future, he would probably, eldest young master. When the other elders saw this situation, their expressions changed. It wasn't that they didn't think that Nan Yuxing wouldn't be able to escape this calamity, but the situation in front of them was still beyond their imagination. Luo Yan composed himself. Extinguish the fire on eldest young master first. Before he finished speaking, a bloody wound suddenly appeared on Nan Yuxing's arm, who was lying on the ground. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1891. The wound was about an inch long and extremely deep. Even his bones could be seen. Luo Yan hesitated for a moment. Actually, such a scene was nothing to him and the other elders who were used to seeing life and death. The reason why they were so surprised was because the wound had appeared too suddenly. In that instant there was no external interference. It was obvious that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. Why would such a wound appear on a normal person's body? Then, before they could react, a similar wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's other hand. Perhaps it was because he had been burned in the fire for too long, but most of his hands had shrunk. However, that bloody wound still appeared out of nowhere. The twisted skin and muscles seemed to have been cut open by something sharp. There was no blood dripping, but it still made one feel uneasy. Luo Yan, the elders looked at Luo Yan subconsciously. Although they were all elders, their statuses were slightly inferior to Luo Yan's. Therefore, when something happened, they immediately asked for Luo Yan's opinion. However, Luo Yan's heart was in a mess. His eyes were fixed on the 2 wounds on Nan Yuxing's body. His expression was terrifyingly solemn. With just one look, he realized that there was something wrong with Nan Yuxing's body. From the looks of it, it was very likely that the force in his body had gone out of control. A god reverend's body had accumulated a large amount of energy. Once it went out of control, it would wreak havoc in the body. The consequences would be unimaginable. Just as he was deep in thought, a wound appeared on Nan Yuxing's shoulder. Moreover, the wound on his arm was expanding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Nan Yuxing curled up on the ground. He had lost consciousness and was trembling all over. Save me." His face was severely burned and he couldn't open his eyes. Only the intermittent voices in his ears allowed him to know that Luo Yan and the others were by his side. Nan Yuxing relied on his last bit of willpower and murmured for help. Luo Yan's heart was in a knot and his brows were tightly knitted. Of course he wanted to save Nan Yuxing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to come here. But, in this situation, what should he do? Seeing that the wounds on Nan Yuxing's body were increasing, Luo Yan could only hurriedly extinguish the sparks on his body and plan to bring him back first. However, before he could touch Nan Yuxing's body, he suddenly heard Nan Yuxing's voice. I'm sorry." Luo Yan abruptly stopped and subconsciously looked at Nan Yuxing's face. Nan Yuxing's face was so badly burned that it was almost unrecognizable. However, Luo Yan could clearly hear the deep pain and guilt in those words. He stared blankly for a while and did not move. Sorry? Why did Nan Yuxing suddenly say that? Was he blaming himself for not protecting Nanny earlier? But it didn't sound that tone. It was as if he had done something wrong to Nanny. Luo, seeing that Luo Yan had suddenly stopped moving, seemingly deep in thought, the elders felt a little strange. This voice brought Luo Yan back to his senses. I'm fine, he hurriedly replied. Just as he was about to continue, he suddenly sensed a wave of energy overflowing from Nan Yuxing's wounds. This energy was very mottled, but it was mixed with an extremely familiar aura. Luo Yan's eyes widened. He looked at Nan Yuxing in shock. This aura. He almost couldn't control himself. He quickly reached out and grabbed Nan Yuxing's wrist. Hey Luo Yan, what's wrong? Luo Yan's expression was very strange. He couldn't help but make the few elders beside him worried. He was clearly fine just now. Why did he suddenly? However, at this moment Luo Yan could no longer hear their voices. He separated a part of his force and forced it into Nan Yuxing's body. As expected, the energy in Nan Yuxing's body was completely messed up. But the key point was, Luo Yan was clearly familiar with this energy. And that Yuan meridian? Luo Yan's hand trembled slightly. His face turned pale and the veins on his forehead popped out. A deep sense of anger radiated from his body. The few elders sensed danger. They glanced at each other and didn't dare to ask any more questions. Luo Yan rarely revealed such an expression. They didn't know what was going on. Just as they were filled with doubts, they saw Luo Yan let go of Nan Yuxing's wrist and suddenly choked his neck. Luo Yan, eldest young master. This sudden turn of events caused the remaining elders to be stunned. They couldn't help but open their mouths in a panicked manner. However, Luo Yan's eyes were scarlet. There was a trace of malevolence in his expression. It was truly terrifying. He stared at Nan Yuxing and said word by word. How did he die? The moment he said that, the elders were all shocked. What did Luo Yan mean by suddenly asking eldest young master this question? Could it be that Nanny's death was related to eldest young master? But how was that possible? Nan Yuxing was originally in a half-dead state. After being provoked by Luo Yan, he became more awake. When he met Luo Yan's gaze, a strong sense of fear surged into his heart. Nan Yuxing muttered almost reflexively. I don't know, bang. Luo Yan suddenly made his move. He grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck and slammed his head to the ground. Tell me the truth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1892. Luo Yan was ruthless. This time, Nan Yuxing's head was smashed open. Blood splattered everywhere. Nan Yuxing's head buzzed and he almost fainted. The elders standing by the side were also completely dumbfounded. Why did Luo Yan suddenly attack so heavily? Nan Yuxing was the eldest young master. If anything happened to him, how were they going to explain it when they returned? Luo Yan's attitude was also very strange. Just a moment ago he didn't care about his own safety and wanted to save Nan Yuxing. In the end, for some reason, his attitude suddenly took a 180-degree turn. From the looks of it, not only did he not intend to save Nan Yuxing, he even wanted to kill Nan Yuxing personally. Luo Yan. Calm down. An elder finally couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up. But before he could say anything else, Luo Yan turned around and glanced at him. This glance was extremely cold. It was as if it was wrapped in deep anger and hatred. That elder's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't say anything to persuade him. They had never seen Luo Yan like this. In the entire Nan family, Luo Yan's strength was one of the top few people. His status was noble, but his personality was very indifferent. He rarely interfered in any of the Nan family's decisions and would only intervene when it involved Nanyi. This time he suddenly acted like this. Could it be that he was sure that Nanyi's death was really related to Nan Yuxing? But how was this possible? Nan Yuxing was Nanyi's biological brother. Luo Yan retracted his gaze and grabbed Nan Yuxing's neck, forcing him to raise his head. Speak. What's going on with your Yuan meridian? Nan Yuxing's heart turned cold. Luo Yan actually asked such a question. So what Chu Luiyue said before was all true? Nan Yuxing's mind was in a mess. Coupled with his serious injuries, the blood in his body surged and he spat out a mouthful of blood. But he couldn't spit out a single word. His guess was confirmed and his heart was like dead ashes. Seeing his reaction, how could Luo Yan not understand? He slowly tightened his grip and a strong killing intent surged out from his eyes. Bits and pieces of the past flashed through his mind in an incomparably chaotic manner. He had always felt that Nanyi's death was a little strange. However, due to his overwhelming grief and lack of evidence, he was certain that the mysterious man he saw before he fainted that day was from the Yuntian Tower. Because of this, he hated Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue to the core. When Nan Yuxing mentioned that he wanted to come to the Peach Blossom Cove to seek revenge, he agreed without hesitation. But he never would have thought the real person who killed Nanyi was actually someone else. The Yuan meridian and energy in Nan Yuxing's body clearly belonged to Nanyi. No wonder he could recover in such a short time. He even made a breakthrough. So all of this was because he had to bear Nanyi's life. Now that the truth was in front of his eyes, everything that had happened before seemed very wrong. Now that he thought about it, he should have sensed that something was wrong. However, his eyes had long been blinded by hatred, so how could he see those things? Until now. Everything was revealed. Luo Yan suddenly laughed. He truly felt that he was ridiculous and he also felt that Nan Yuxing was ridiculous. They all said that they were here to avenge Nanyi, but in reality, they had found the wrong person. Especially Nan Yuxing, he was simply a thief crying thief. What a joke. That smiling face kept flashing in front of Luo Yan's eyes. His eyes turned cold and he slowly tightened his grip. Nan Yuxing sensed danger and instinctively wanted to escape. However, the energy in his body was raging wildly, and his internal organs were almost severely damaged. He didn't even have the strength to stand up, so how could he talk about anything else? Therefore, he could only gasp for breath and tremble in vain. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Luo Yan? The few elders also felt that his condition was very strange. Just as they were about to open their mouths to persuade him, they heard the crisp sound of bones cracking. Crack. The few of them were horrified. Luo Yan had broken Nan Yuxing's neck. He wanted his life. Nan Yuxing's head tilted and his body trembled. Soon he stopped breathing. There was dead silence. Everyone did not think that Luo Yan was actually really so heartless. He killed Nan Yuxing without hesitation. Because they were too shocked, the few elders all subconsciously held their breaths. Their eyes were filled with deep shock. However, Luo Yan acted as if nothing had happened and stood up. He raised his arm and flicked his wrist. Nan Yuxing's corpse was thrown back into the burning flames by him. In the blink of an eye, it was completely devoured. The whole process was smooth and Luo Yan didn't hesitate at all. Then he turned around and looked at the remaining elders. His eyes were cold and gloomy like never before. Eldest young master was defeated by Shangguanyu and died in the sea of fire. The elders understood that this was an order. Luo Yan had killed the first young master in front of them. How could he still say that it was Shangguanyu who did it? Yes. We will avenge the young master. One of the elders was the first to react. His face was pale and he said with a trembling voice. Luo Yan nodded in satisfaction. For eldest young master, we will go through fire and water. Today, even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we will not hesitate. What do you think? What else can we do? You've already said so much. Can others still refute you? The elders nodded their heads stiffly. Even though they had seen many storms, This was the first time they had experienced something like this. Luo Yan nodded. Whoever kills Shangguan Yu will be the hero of the Nan family. In the distance, Chu Luiyue, who had just dodged Tianlei, also noticed the situation here and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing with his own hands and planned to push the blame to her? Her red lips curled into an extremely cold smile. She wasn't surprised that Luo Yan killed Nan Yuxing. She had long seen that Luo Yan had feelings for Nan Yi. Although he hid it very well, some things could be seen at a glance. But she wasn't happy that he wanted to drag her down with him. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.